Being said, we will open up the, I'm not gonna get my glasses, because I can't read anything.
Today is May 8th, sir.
The May 8th meeting, we will open up with, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have minutes tonight. Jamie took a much-needed vacation. So
What's
we'll
that?
be on those for the next one.
Okay. Jamie, you slacking?
She was on a much-needed vacation. Much-needed, because she's
We'll have to
doing a
bring-
lot around
We'll
here.
have to bring Donna back. First order of business is an RDA for 40 Ridgeway.
So as you recall, at the last meeting, you asked for some things to be on the revised site plan, which you have in front of you and is coming up here on the screen, which included some flag changes that I requested, a stockpile location, and there was a shed discrepancy. The existing shed has been located on the plan and is now being shown moved. You have a second plan in your packets that would be a second plan of record, which isn't drawn on this plan. It's drawn on the old plan, I would just note. So I don't know that that really matters, but it shows how the old shed area will be restored. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Good evening, Dennis Grigi with Andover Consultants with an office at 1 Easterwood Place. As Jennifer described, we made some revisions to the plans. The major change was going out and locating the shed that was in violation, and that is being proposed to be moved well outside of the 50-foot no build and the 25-foot no disturb. The shed area, the existing shed area, will be restored. It'll be allowed to regrow naturally, of course, and it'll also be 6 buffer zone plantings put in that area, 3 high bush blueberry and 3 northern arrowwood. Beyond that, it'll be allowed to revegetate naturally. The plants will be put in by hand to limit the disturbance. The shed will be picked up with a small forklift and shifted to its proposed location. Additionally, a stockpile area was shown on this plan as requested by the commission at the last meeting. Other than that, the proposal is the same. It's the 20 by 20-foot addition with the relocated patio and small retaining wall to hold back the patio.
Dennis, I forgot, what's the addition on a frost wall or a basement, or what's the?
I believe it's going to be a full basement.
I just wonder when I saw the big stockpile location, how much material was coming out of the ground. So it'll have to be trucked off, a lot of it.
Yeah, it will be trucked off. And I know there's going to be the access way shown on the plan is along the side of the house, so there'll be some, disturbance of the topsoil there.
So that, you may want to have them put down stone, I would guess. That's kind of up to you. This is where RDAs and NOIs become a little, all those things would be standard conditions. I mean, I guess maybe just that the driveway be swept daily so that there's no material tracking.
We got erosion controls along that whole edge, so even if he disturbs the side, yeah, they're going to want to restore that, so I'm not too concerned about that, but you're right, tracking out to the street. So where and I don't know how old the original house is, but, where we had a violation of a shed, are we having any discussion about putting monumentation along the 25?
That was in my recommendations, that they monument the existing tree line, whether you let them do that on the trees or you want something else, I guess, would be the discussion.
As long as we get that, I think I'm all set, thanks.
Was this the site, Jen, that had an uncertified general pool, or am I thinking of a different project?
No.
This is not the site?
The shed that was there on the plan.
What's Campbell?
Yeah, no, I got the last plan, I'm just
The other,
comparing.
if you flip it over, there's the restoration, maybe, if you're on the right one. Yeah.
Well, I have the last plan, and I have the revised plan here with me.
Well, you have on the last plan is where the restoration is shown, in the shed location, if you're on the right one.
I have both plans, let me. Okay. So the moving of the flag lights changed the setbacks of the project?
Yeah, but everything's still outside of the no-build zone, as shown.
All right, and you're satisfied with the delineation?
Now I am, yeah.
Now you are, all right. Okay, all set, Mr. Chairman.
My question is your construction access is in the 25?
No, it's in the
There it is.
50.
It's in some of the 25.
Oh, it's in the 50s. Well,
No.
it
Well,
it will go into
They
25.
could move the erosion controls all the way up to the 25, if that's what you
You're
mean.
not gonna get a truck through.
Then you're not going to get a truck in.
Okay.
Oh, it's in the
so-
20, it is in the 25.
It is in the 25.
So maybe we have them put stone.
So we should make us,
It's already lawn area. It's not like this is, and I think I noted in the last iteration of this filing that the wetland has expanded from what it previously was when this house was built, because we have that plan. So it's not like they moved the lawn into the 25. The wetland came up.
no, but I would just, I'll leave it up to the commission, see what they want to do. But we should try and keep that side as stabilized as we can, because actually half the construction access is in the 25. So if we put stone along the driveway,
Yeah, I mean, we've done this on other RDAs. You did it to Foster Street when they were removing the pool over next to Al, because he was tracking all that material, same thing. So you just had him put a stone construction entrance in. I don't
Okay.
think it's too much to ask if there's gonna be a lot of machinery moving back and forth.
that's the only issue I have with the project. Deb?
Okay, so Jen, you'd like for there to be an EO for the shed removal prior to construction?
So when there's an enforcement issue, never permitted, especially under a negative determination, there's just no teeth to that. This doesn't get recorded. So for the shed, for the activity involving the shed moving and the restoration, there should be an enforcement order requiring that to be done. And I would say it should be done before construction can start.
Okay.
Or if you prefer by a date certain, however you want to write it. But I wouldn't recommend that you,
Shed you removed first.
yeah, so that's what I was recommending.
Okay.
Just for another quick question, where was the shed before?
In the 25-foot no disturbance zone, it's
Shown on
shown
Got
on,
that plan now?
Okay, there it is, okay, all right,
And it wants to go here.
okay. Well, that's another issue. Moving that shed,
but I think the approval of the new shed location should be in the determination.
okay. You all set, Jeff? Deb?
What
Doug?
what I want to be cautious of, though, is, and I understand that date certain is something we have to get in there, but I think it's a little reckless for us to say that should be a pre-construction or, you know, a first step prior to doing any other process, because it's really, that shed will end up being in the way for whatever stockpile they're putting in place. So I almost think we put a realistic calendar deadline on it of when it should be, needs to be moved. That way, if the project doesn't, the rest of the project doesn't move forward, at least the shed gets moved out. But at least it allows it to stay there out of the way, undisturbed, and as they're doing their final cleanup restoration of the yard, they can clean up that disturbed area.
Dennis, how long do you think?
To move the shed or for the
Well,
construction project?
Yeah, it's till that stockpile's out of there and they could reasonably move the shed.
I think they can move the shed immediately. I know the contractor that will be doing the work, moving the shed, the addition, the patio. He's currently doing work inside the house right now, so he's on site every day, I think, at this point.
Yeah, so leave it as pre-construction, I guess.
So it's something that can be done immediately, and I think they can put it where they need to put it and still stockpile soil. like Jennifer said, that is a large stockpile area.
It's bigger than it needs to be, okay.
Yeah, it may be, it's probably bigger than it needs to be.
Probably half the size. You can always cheat a little bit, bring it close to the house, if you had to, once you remove the patio. Matter of fact, that'd be a better place, near there.
Yeah, I'm agree, okay, if they get enough room to work, then sooner is better.
So it's, Jen, so we're gonna, the shed is to be moved before they start construction of the project,
Right.
okay? I don't, aside from that, any other questions? Doug said no questions. Any other questions?
No, so just to confirm, we want an EO ahead of the motion, right?
Yes.
You want an EO to move. So I would move the EO as proposed.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention.
I don't know if you have any butters that want to.
Is there any butters to this project? No, okay.
All right, so it's a negative number 3 with the conditions of pre and post construction, monumentation of the existing tree line, and a stabilized construction entrance.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. One abstention. Thank you. Next one is an NOI 242 1745 350 Winthrop Ave.
Did we ever hear from them? Is anyone
Nobody
here
here.
for 350? You might just want to table that. They
Yeah,
said
we'll
they may
table that.
continue, but I'm not, they didn't give us anything saying they were continuing.
All right, we'll table that for now. Next one is 242 1753 247 Chickering Road, Enterprise Bank.
So just this week, we received, as requested, a restoration plan for where they're going to be pulling out where the parking used to be along the wetland line, and there was some snow plowing activity. There's a buffer zone restoration now. Did you send me a plan?
Yes.
Did we get, we might, okay, I'll look. I may not have got the most recent one. I didn't get here until late tonight, so. The landscape plan?
Yes, second one down? Yeah,
That's it?
that's it.
Okay, okay.
Jamie, that's the same one that's in our packet, right?
It should be the same one.
Okay.
So, does Norse's, is there a detail of that, or is it just in the notes somewhere?
At the bottom of the page, we summarized, just for the record, David Jordan with MHF Design Consultants. We
Okay.
kind of summarized what Norse Environmental did in a narrative form in the letter. So essentially, we're going to be removing the fill that had been placed over the property line within the 25-foot no disturb, and replanting that area with a number of different shrubs. There was 4 species that we would be putting in there. So this plan shows the limits of that work and the shrubs. It was serviceberry, winterberry, I believe, yeah, red osier dogwood, and eastern redbud was the shrubs that were going to be planted in that area. It's about 2,200 square feet that's going to be restored. So we're looking at about 35 shrubs if we plant them at 8 feet on center. So the other thing we're proposing to do is right at the 25-foot no-build setback line, we're proposing a stone wall to build a stacked New England-style stone wall to permanently mark that 25-foot no-disturb limit. Right now, as you may recall, the pavement, the existing pavement out there actually extends into that 25-foot no-disturb buffer. So we're pulling that back and establishing that 25-foot no-build line between that and the proposed edge of pavement, which is about another 15 feet further away. We have a series of trees and shrubs separate from the restoration plantings that are proposed in that area. And part of that is to screen headlights from cars that are coming onto the site and using those parking spaces, screen the headlights from the residential abutters to the, that'd be the east and the south as they enter the site. One thing we did want to mention to the commission tonight is that when we went to the planning board last month, they had actually asked for a fence, like a stockade fence along that property line to achieve that screening of headlights. We did talk with Jen, and she expressed her preference not to have the stockade fence, but to have the stone wall that we have shown here. And I think that we've addressed the planning board's concern regarding headlights by adding additional shrubs in that area between the pavement and this proposed stone wall, some evergreen shrubs that will provide the screening that I think the planning board desires. If the commission has any comments on that, we'd certainly like to hear that. We're going back to the planning board on the 21st of this month.
Is that the arborvitae?
It's arborvitaes, and there's some other, it's not just arborvitae, there are some shrubs, and I apologize, I don't remember exactly what they were.
Yeah, I don't see anything, Little King, River Birch. It's hard to, I haven't had a chance. So some of the plantings aren't true natives, but I don't see anything on the list that's, since they're doing a buffer zone on the other side of the stone wall, that's 100% native and natural. I wouldn't be too concerned about the somewhat ornamental variety of what's around the parking lot. And I think it's preferable to having a stockade fence between the site and the wetland.
And you have to report our preference back to the planning board? Is that what you're suggesting, or are you just curious?
We were just curious. We just wanted to make it part of the record tonight that we discussed it. I don't think they were looking for a report from you, but we're just trying to balance the desire of, the two different boards here with this
Yeah,
project.
So if the premise is to provide some sort of a screen, whether it's vegetative or a fence, then I think you've achieved that through vegetation. And my preference is the fence doesn't do anything to protect the wetland at all. And in fact, it's many instances, any drifting litter and stuff, just gets trapped and may not get picked up. It just sits out in that dead area. The shrubs prevent snow stockpiling, which is the one that impacts us most as it gets adjacent. So I think you've done everything that we're looking for, and the fence doesn't give us any added protection.
Okay, thank you. What?
Well said. It's beautiful design.
Yeah, unless I'm going blind, there's no snow stockpiling on this site at all, correct?
We do have some on the, we would be doing it in front of the shrubs, mainly towards the back of the site, behind the building, where we can accommodate it in between the plantings.
Didn't the planning board require that you have that on
Yeah,
there?
we show that on the site plan sheet.
Site plan. Is it this one, the site plan set?
Yes, it would be the fourth sheet, I believe.
Because beyond the shrubs, you don't really own much property. It's
Is it
the
this one?
99 parking lot, isn't it?
That one there.
So you really don't have a lot. And does the stone wall go on that backside
So
also?
there are stormwater changes, which are probably worth addressing as well, but,
Yes, I was going to mention that. So, yeah,
Does the
this
stone wall
plan,
go all the way around?
oh, there's this,
no.
No,
So the,
there it is, in the back.
just on this side where the abutters, where the residential houses are.
correct.
Okay.
Now, on the back side of the property, there's an existing stockade fence that is the 99 Restaurants fence. That's going to remain, that's in good condition, and that's
Okay.
going to remain, and that's on the property line.
Okay.
And we are doing plantings in front of that.
So there really isn't much snow stockpiling to speak of there.
Admittedly, there's not.
Are the plantings in that area herbaceous such that they'll be dying back in
Some, yeah, those, I believe, are in those areas.
But we're gonna designate no snow areas, because I know, they'll go right, if they get it for load, they're gonna go right over that stone wall onto your new plants and, because I don't know how high, I forget how high, I didn't hear
We
how
can
high you're gonna
condition
put the
that
wall.
to have no snow
Doesn't matter.
stockpiling
Front end
signs,
load will go
just
right
on
over it.
that side.
Yeah, that's
So,
fine.
I would, well, I'm requiring the designated, no snow stockpiling.
Yep, that's fine.
You can try and put it in the back, but you're gonna destroy those plants.
Do
That's
you want me to
my,
go to the stormwater?
Yeah, so one change, one request that came out of the meeting when we were here a month ago was to see if we could do anything in terms of low-impact development techniques. And what we've done, we had 2 catch basins on the south side of the buildings. That's the entrance side when you come in off of Chickering Road. We've replaced those 2 catch basins with tree box filters to treat the stormwater before it goes into our closed drainage system. So we were able to accommodate that request in those locations. And that, again, that's the side closest to the wetlands. Other than that, the drainage system is as previously designed. We have some underground detention ultimately tying into the stormwater drainage system in Chickering Road.
And so you submitted comments to the peer reviewer, and we're waiting
Yes.
for comments from the peer reviewer back at this point.
Sean?
Is the lot being expanded at all on the southern side, or is it staying where it has been for years?
It's actually being contracted, I would say, because they've kind of exceeded their limits in terms of they're over the property line right now with the parking. So we're pulling back the pavement about 20 feet further north from where it is currently.
So you've got the wall just outside the 25?
Right, yeah, right on the 25, yep.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, thank you.
No questions. Follow-up, filter boxes. You showed the filter boxes on the landscape plan, but the detail, are they curb inlet? That's
Yes.
picking up parking lot drainage and getting them into the filter
Correct.
boxes? Okay, good.
Any more questions? We have to,
Just, I don't know if there's any
so we're gonna
butters
have to
here.
continue, correct?
One other thing I asked them to do is, since they're doing some work on the adjacent property, there should probably be something in the file that says they have permission from Cobblestone Crossing. They have a homeowners association.
Right.
I'm sure you can.
So we have
And
to-
any improvement to that wetland, I think, would probably be,
I'll be welcome.
yeah,
So we have to continue, correct?
unless there's anyone here.
No, we have planning, they have an open
No,
planning
no, but
decision.
I don't know if there's anyone in the audience here for this.
Well, is there anybody here for Enterprise Bank? No?
No? Okay.
All right. So next meeting, when is the planning
The
board meeting?
day after the planning board,
Right, so
so,
that works out perfectly.
All right, all right, so we need to continue to the next meeting.
and
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
do you expect the planning board to have a decision at the next meeting, or just to?
We're hoping.
Okay.
We are.
Because we can try to align our timelines based on my ability to produce an order of conditions, but,
Because generally, we don't approve a project when another board has an
yeah,
open.
but they'll hopefully have closed on the 21st.
Well, that's good. I
if all
hope,
the ducks are-
I heard that.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next one is 242-1754, 326 Campbell Road.
So today, I think we received something from Norse about the ponds at 326 Campbell. I read it just before the meeting, and I'll let Dennis present before I provide my comments, but I sent you a quick email about what I thought about that.
Okay.
But I don't know, I didn't want to get too much into that if you're not changing the plan, so.
Hi, Dennis Gricci, Andover Consultants. I have not had a chance to review Jennifer's email, but Norse, at the last meeting, we continued, so just a quick overview of the project. We did design the site to comply with the 50-foot no disturb and the 75-foot no build, as if that pond in the back of the site and the side of the site were both either an ephemeral or vernal pool. That was because at the time we submitted, it was not the time of year where we could determine if it was or was not a vernal pool. Since the last meeting, Norris has made 5 visits to the site, and they submitted a letter, or I submitted a letter on the applicant's behalf that Norris prepared that, in summary, it can't be certified as a vernal pool based on their 5 site visits. It meets the physical criteria, but does not meet the biological criteria based on the observations they've made. And if you're reading through the ephemeral pool criteria in the North Andover regulations, it's not the larger pond in the rear of the proposed dwelling. It's not a temporary water body. It's based on historic aerial images. It appears to be water throughout the year. Again, we haven't been able to confirm that, but it's pretty evident based on the aerial images that it's there throughout the year. The smaller pond, which is on the property line of the abutter to the left, that, based on the aerial images, again, that may dry up most of it. It's hard to tell.
So that's the problem, is the criteria isn't that it dries up.
It,
F does not require. So F is the criteria under which the commission certifies vernal pools when there's no biological criteria, and vernal pools don't always dry up. That's not a criteria for a vernal pool either.
no, it meets the physical criteria. It's just the
Right.
biological it doesn't meet for a vernal.
Right, and F, if they certified it as ephemeral, you're right, though, it would not meet the vernal pool criteria.
Right.
Without that, so it would only be an ephemeral pool. And I have a hard time believing that that larger pond functions as a vernal pool. I'm not disagreeing with them, I just don't think the evidence they provided necessarily negates the fact that Natural Heritage put that possible on it.
A lot of negatives in that statement. Are we saying the opposite, that the larger pond very well might be a vernal pool at some point if the species actually use
If
it?
it were, I mean, it's huge, it's massive, and,
Right.
you
That's a
know.
pond, that's.
Right,
It's
it's
a
a
pond.
pond. I'm just saying, what they, they did some dip netting, I don't know how far around, where, like, if I had the time, I would have gone out to see it. I don't know, I guess that's where this gets a little dicey. Natural Heritage put the potential label on it. Norris didn't see anything. They also did some minnow, which had been done at the pond on Busby's property, remember? And there they caught minnows. Here, no minnows were caught, so there's no presence of fish from what we can tell, but I'd have a, hard time believing a water body of that
Busby's had it,
size
this
would,
one, yeah.
this one wouldn't have it, so, it just puts it in a weird sort of, the smaller pond, I wouldn't rule out. I don't think it has fish, and the fact that it doesn't dry up doesn't mean anything.
So the definite certainty of the function of the ponds is immaterial because they've designed it as if it were anyway.
Right, that's where I didn't
Isn't
want to
that the
get too
bottom line
deep
here?
into this.
We did design it with that, you're correct, we designed it with the 50-foot no disturb. I'll point out a small portion of the no disturb, 50-foot no disturb is actually impacted to remove the existing dwelling. You'll see in the kind of attached,
Yeah, is that not, I guess I had mentioned to them in there that I thought the driveway extended into there, but it doesn't, so.
it's not, yeah, it's in the driveway, but there is a small hatched area shown on the plan that's necessary to remove the existing dwelling and some of the surrounding material. But the site has been designed with the 75-foot no build and the 50-foot no disturb. I'm sure the applicant would like to clear a little more of the lawn if we could prove that that was not a vernal pool. If the monitoring goes on, if we can close the meeting tonight based on this site plan, if we're able to provide the evidence that it's not a vernal pool or ephemeral pool, we could come back for an insignificant change to, and again, the changes I think will be limited to moving the deck to the rear of the house. Right now, it's shown on the side. That deck wants to be in the rear where the kitchen would be, but it works on the side, and also I think clearing some more of the lawn area.
Just so we're clear. If we move forward under the presumption they are pools, and you're designing it that way, the method that they would use if at some point there's because it would be as if it were, a definitive determination made that they are not certifiable pools, they would simply file a modification to the order, which would simply be the introducing the new line as evidence. The fact
Well,
the pool's on.
given the state of the larger pond, which casts sort of the biggest buffer to the back of the house, you know, again, I don't want to, if they wanted to clear more lawn, they could monument the 50 with markers to sort of say that's a no disturbance zone, but yet, is that already where you're proposing to clearing up to the 50?
We're proposing to clear up to the 50-foot
Oh,
no
okay.
disturb as if it were a vernal or ephemeral pool. So if we could provide the evidence, if we close the hearing tonight based on the presumption that it is a vernal pool, if the applicant is able to do more site visits, monitoring throughout the spring season, and show that it's not a vernal pool, we could come back and revise the, not a 50-foot no disturb, but a 25-foot no disturb, or somewhere in the middle to just gain more lawn area.
It's going to result in a much, there's going to be a lot of more removal of vegetation if they go to the 25.
I'm gonna say I'm not comfortable with this procedure.
Right, but
At all,
I guess I would be less inclined to say that the deck couldn't be on the back of the house based on the size of the large pond back there.
Maybe a third-party peer scientific review is in order. That's the way this commission has performed in the past on numerous parcels. When there's a question between experts of what is and what isn't, we go for a tiebreaker. And if that's going to make or break the project, or protect something that may well be vernal, maybe the evidence wasn't collected, you know, we just don't know. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just saying that professionally, that's the way we've handled it on this commission for a long time.
Am I understanding well that he's accommodating the vernal pool setbacks?
Well, they're saying temporarily. They're saying we'll accommodate it for now.
My position was, it's permanent.
It's
And if
permanent.
something
It
changes,
is.
come back
Correct.
with
Right,
a
exactly.
modification.
And I think he's agreeing to that.
And we're
as well.
we're comfortable with
Who's going
those.
to make that determination?
Well, I guess when they come back in front of us with somebody that says that for that modification, then we'll say, we want a third-party review.
Right. That would be the
Cross that-
procedure then.
It seems reasonable.
I think all anybody has to do out there is spend some time fishing.
I will bet this fish.
I would too.
It's huge.
And if there is one fish,
One fish,
It's
that's
not a
all they
vernal
need.
pool.
Right.
What Sean and Joel are proposing is that they've considered a vernal pool.
I get it.
If they don't, they're gonna continue testing, and then if they come back and say they want a modification, then we can throw the third-party review in if we want.
I think it's the cleanest way.
Pardon me?
It's the cleanest way.
Yes.
Because we're not going to certify that it is or isn't in our
Right.
order of conditions.
We're just saying under criteria F of this could,
Has potential.
Well, we didn't have anybody on behalf of the commission going out and doing parallel work. We're using the applicant's expert. And I said, I'm not criticizing the applicant's expert, I'm just saying that that's not the usual procedure for us on a site like this.
Right.
I'll do it any way y'all want to do. I just want to point that out, and make sure the record's really clear.
Okay.
I think we need some more substantial evidence to say one way or the other, I guess is what I'm hearing from the commission. And if
That's-
you're willing to close an issue with the current plan, I think,
Yeah, we're comfortable closing an issue with the current plan, and if that's what's built, then that's fine.
And Jen, would you be able to put language in the order, indicating that this, something along the lines of this discussion has happened, there's been no determination one way or the other?
well, I think by sticking with the current setbacks, we're saying that it's presumed to be an ephemeral pool until proven otherwise.
Well,
Well, let's say it then.
I think
Yeah.
exactly, I agree with you, that in the section where we talk about what the resource areas are,
Yeah.
I think we get very specific about the ephemeral pool, and we go even so far as to say in that the deck has been constructed on the side of the house to accommodate the setback, and it should stay there until such time as the
Oh, I don't
status
think
be
we addressed
determined.
that. I think the
Right.
site's been
Don't you
designed
address
in
it at all?
accordance.
Leave it alone.
Yep, you say it's presumed to be, I like that language.
If he wants to prove that's not a vernal pool, so he can put his deck in the back of
I
the
just want to
house.
prevent them from putting the deck up before they come back to us, that's all.
Well,
No,
he
they
can figure
won't
it
do
out.
that. I don't think that'll happen. No one's
As
gonna go.
I always point out, I'm not worried about the current applicant. What I worry about is people move.
Well,
And so the current applicant, I trust and believe the current applicant. they decide to sell and move and a new person comes in.
Right, but the 50-foot no disturbance zone per all of our orders of conditions will be monumented with
All right.
plaques, so that would be out there.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't remind everybody what the potential is here.
The whole order will be written with these subzones until proven otherwise.
All right,
Fair enough.
okay.
I have two questions. First of all, the abutter questioning the property line. Have you spoken to him or done anything about that?
We did. The applicant went to the abutter's house last week, spoke to him about the two issues that he brought up, the property line. I'm not sure where that stands. I don't know if he's going to hire a surveyor to do a property line survey on his behalf. And the other issue was the location of the decommissioned well. He could not, he being the abutter, could not find the well currently. He was going to try to poke around and see if he could find that well. I spoke to Brian LaGrasse, the Board of Health agent. We submitted plans to the Board of Health for review. Brian did not have a comment regarding the abutter's well. He did not have any record of that decommissioned well. And I also spoke to Ms. Golden from DEP. She's the Title V go-to person in our office anyway. She stated that it typically would not, a well that's been decommissioned wouldn't be able to be recommissioned if a septic system was built in and around that decommissioned well. In this case, we're going to have a new septic system. I imagine there's other septic systems in the area. She said it's uncommon, so that's where we stand with that. We reached out to the abutter. He couldn't find the location of the well, so if it's an irrigation well, it's a 25-foot buffer, which we have ample room. If you were to reactivate it as an irrigation well.
Is there an existing septic system there now?
There is. Our existing house has an existing septic system. There's no record plan of that or as-built plan of that.
So you don't know where it is?
We don't. It's in the front yard. We just don't know exactly where.
The facts are, the abutter claims he has a well. Can't find it.
Correct.
It may be far enough away, it may not be, but we just don't know where it is. It is decommissioned because it's not currently being used.
Correct.
So Board of Health is going to act, I'm not speaking for them, they must act on the facts that are before them, just like we have to act on the facts before us. So if there is no well there and the septic system gets installed and you are compliant with Title V, the reality is that other well, unless it's a driven well with a sleeve and everything, if it's an old dug well,
Yep.
it's not permitted anyway. So there's a whole bunch of other things that I don't think we get involved in the minutia of what that well might be. Had nothing to do with this filing. If it was an active well, we'd have a different conversation.
Absolutely.
And plus, that's why I asked, if there was a septic system there. So we don't know how old it is, where it is. Now, you're gonna put the new septic system where the old one was, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you have the Board of Health approval for that?
We've received comments middle of last week, so we're revising the plans, and we can provide the commission with a revised set of plans, mostly notes.
It's mostly out of jurisdiction anyway. Just wondered. I didn't check on the status, so I wondered. It's okay.
It's quite evident that you specialize in vernal pools.
I deal with a lot of vernal pools. Seems to be quite a bit of them in North Andover.
Yeah, you've come before us twice with projects with questionable vernal pools.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I have any questions? Good, Deb?
No question.
Sean?
All set, thank you.
Doug?
Yeah, from the plan that's in front of me, there appears to be a shed within the 25-foot no disturb zone that hasn't been discussed at all. And, Commissioner wanna do
Oh, they're
anything
not
about
leaving
it,
that
or
shed, are they?
No, that shed will be removed. It's,
what? I mean, there's no note to the fact that it will be removed.
Yeah, yeah.
should say that.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that's listed in the activities, shed to be removed. It's
mostly a pile of
Yeah,
boards
it's-
at this point. It's
it's
pretty,
not much of a
If
shed.
it's anything like the house, I would say the shed is,
yeah, it's pretty close, maybe worse.
so, any more questions? Right, we need a motion?
I would just say, I don't mean to throw a monkey wrench in the thing but the area to the side of the house isn't, if it's more than 100 feet from the vernal pool, the pond, it technically doesn't need to be that subzone.
The area by the driveway,
Yeah,
It's the area of the resource area within 100 feet of the vernal pool. I think it does extend, but we can check.
It might be a modification you want to seek at some point. I don't think it extends that far. I think the pond is way back at the back of the site, and so
Yep.
it would also give them the opportunity to have more lawn in a place where it made more sense, because that area leading out to the shed is all scrub, and certainly, I mean, the shed area isn't going to fall into that, but I think as you run along the side of the house, it would give them more ability to do something.
Okay.
Okay, so we're all set? So we need a motion.
I would approve, did you seek a waiver for this minor disturbance in the 50? I can't recall at this point.
We didn't formally request it since it, at
It's
this
sort of
point,
for
it's-
removal purposes, I guess. I don't know how you want to, it's not for construction purposes or yard purposes, it's for
I
demolition.
move that we
basically.
grant a waiver for temporary disturbance of approximately 500 square feet for the purposes of encroaching within the 50-foot no disturb, for the purpose of demolishing the existing dwelling.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
As well as the shed.
And shed.
Yeah, the shed.
And the shed.
And then it would just be to close an issue.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next one is to be continued, 242-1722, 173 Campbell Road.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Next one,
That's for 2 meetings, by the way, till June of
oh,
something.
you know what I forgot to ask was about is, are they on here? Those guys that were,
I don't know.
they're not here.
If they were, they would have spoken up.
Yeah, I'm sure they would have. Next one is 242-0960, COC request, 1270 Turnpike Street.
So, I didn't do a lot of research in this, but I was the one who asked them to do it, so I'm assuming what they've said is correct. That this site was constructed under another order of conditions, 242-1095. Right. So when I looked back, there wasn't a certificate of compliance for 960, and just to make this all kosher for the new owner, I asked them to close that out. I mean, if any work was ever done under that order of conditions, there's no telling it now because everything was constructed under 1095.
That's exactly right. My name is Vasek Talako. I'm here from Hancock Associates to represent Mr. Sampson, the owner. And basically, this is a sort of an old order of conditions, and we are here, as Jennifer mentioned, for basically housekeeping purposes. It was filed. Nothing was ever done that we can find. And since then, there were additional plans and permits filed. And we have done one quite recently that the order of conditions has been issued.
Yeah.
So all we are asking is to issue an order of, certificate of compliance, for a project that was never done.
So an invalid OOC. I think he put everything on there that's out there. This was basically the COC, the proposed plan for the new project with, the existing conditions plan. And you gave 1095 a COC, so something that predated 1095 really shouldn't be influencing this new project.
It was just an open order that never
Never,
embarked
and there's
upon.
no evidence in the file that anything was ever done.
No, and I remember there being a prior file prior to Seven Hills was what
Yeah.
was built in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, prior to that, there was a filing that never went anywhere. So this is just to clean that out, right?
Yep.
I have no
Right.
question.
Yeah.
I'll sit.
Deb? Sean?
No questions?
Doug? Motion?
To issue an invalid, a COC for an invalid OOC.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Did you grab
Thank
that
you.
one as invalid?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next one is 242-1653, COC request for Wellington Way.
So Bob, I went out there and I could have swore I saw erosion control along the edge of the road.
Oh, we already did
Did you
this.
grab that? Was there like a black silt sack out there? Okay, you might want to check that. Across from, on the far side of Boxford Street. I could have swore I saw stakes in an old black silt sock in there.
Just this little piece or something?
No, it was a lot of stakes. Again, I was driving by, so I was just trying to take a look because I didn't have time to, but go ahead, you can present what this was for and we'll go from there.
All right, I'm Bob Messina with Messina Development. We're looking for a certificate of compliance on the water line that we brought down Boxford Street to Wellington Way. It was brought down in November of 2015, up until the first week of December.
So this was done before the filing for Wellington Way, and I remember everything, they've since paved the road, right?
Yes.
And,
Following year.
This was
The-
required by the town
yes.
prior to technical review or anything.
And then there was a line of erosion control on the far side of Boxford Street, which, like I said, we can just condition that all erosion control be removed, or it be looked at before we issue it, but other than that, I don't have any concerns.
Joe?
I have no problem issue it and just hold it in abeyance until we prove it's removed. Just go up and make sure it's out, that's all.
Erosion control on Boxford Street across.
I'm all set.
Al?
So I'm all set with the application, but when you're talking about the sides of the road out there, it's more than just erosion controls. There's places where the guardrail, there's a wire, post and wire guardrail fence. That's,
Not in this location.
is that, it's part of where this water originated, where this line originated.
Didn't, this
It's
went
not on
down
the
to
app-
the hydrant, right? At Breen's property, isn't
Yes.
that? Yeah. I don't-
No?
No.
Okay,
On Boxford?
Yeah. No problem.
Okay. Are we thinking of a different?
No.
So is the problem on the wetland side or on the side where the water line went?
On the opposite side of the street.
I'm just looking at the as-built. Am I missing something? Am I missing the actual water line on here?
I'd have to,
Is that? What are we looking at, Bob?
That's Boxford Street. You go back a little further to the intersection, it was the other way, sorry, to the right. When you come out of Brookview, the water line from Brookview came out and was stubbed out into Boxford Street. So
Is
we
that-
tied, went into the gate valve there.
that could be where I'm thinking about. It's
and
okay.
I know what the question you're asking is, what are we looking
What
at?
are we looking at? What's on
This
this
isn't the
plan as
plan.
far as an as-built?
This doesn't show anything.
I know, it doesn't show the road, doesn't show the water main.
Yeah, where's the
What is
as-built
this
of the
supposed-
line itself?
It's right down on the right side of the road, right down the middle of the lane in the paved street.
Right, but it's not shown on here. So the commission requires that they be as-builted for purposes of, and did you put any stubs out for anyone or anything?
Yeah, the plans that I gave you had the water line on it,
Okay.
ones that I
maybe-
dropped off.
Let me look. Here's the. You wanna
This is what
see?
they had sent me today.
Yeah.
'cause I said there one time
I'm
I thought
sorry,
it
I
was there.
Well,
haven't,
this isn't a criticism of you or your work or anything that you did out here.
we're just,
I'm looking at the plan and I don't see anything shown on it. I mean, they're showing people's driveways, they're showing some nice colored shading. I don't know what it shows. It doesn't say anything.
yeah, it says water main as-built plan too on it. Let's pull it up to its maximum extent.
Are they showing us the limits of what's paved out there? I don't have no idea what those black bumps are. I don't know why one guy's driveway is shaded the same color as the road. I just don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, this,
That's
she-
different.
Jamie's right. Yeah. It's on here. It's just not on there. I don't know why, what's in the electronic copy.
They must have transmitted a partial layer. Oh, there it is.
There you go. Bob's like, what the heck?
All right, so mark this one record.
Right.
Yeah, right here. This other one don't cut it.
No, this plan clears it up.
Yeah,
What I was picturing is beyond Brookview.
Since we do keep everything
East of
electronic,
Brookview, I'm all set.
we'll have to make sure we get that.
I'm all set.
Yeah. Whew, okay.
Sean, any questions? No questions. Doug, any questions? Motion?
Beautiful plan.
Yeah.
Good plan. Yep, that's a good plan. Good.
Okay, so it would be to issue the full certificate of compliance and hold till we can confirm that erosion controls are out.
Jen, on that plan, where is the piece you saw? Just so I get an idea of,
Right, I was right across from Wellington, just, I lived
oh, down there. I thought you meant up, okay. Yeah, all right. I'll go out there tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
2420628, partial COC request for 66 Meadow Road.
I haven't gotten anything additional. We couldn't find the O and M in the file for this particular, and it may be old enough that, I think it predates 96, so it may not have an O and M. But I guess the issue is we haven't gotten any sort of sign off from who's in charge of the maintenance of it, who should be doing, if you go out there, it's clear that there's issues with that pond, from a construction standpoint, from a what's been done to it since standpoint, from a trash standpoint. I don't have any issues with the dwelling. I suppose,
Was the one off of 125, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that was like the first cluster fund.
Yeah, I suppose. Mike Howard's first project, I could almost remember an O&M plan out there.
Yeah, there was one. And,
There's nothing in the file. There's nothing in the planning board file.
this could very well be a set of plans that was lost when the office got
No,
moved.
we have all the plans. They're big files. There's a lot of documentation in them, just nothing in the nature of an O and M.
This was a site that we went out,
Mrs. Farm.
well, this was the
Yes.
one, if you recall,
Yes, yes.
where this was the first time
I
when
don't
we
know if
ordered a
there's
stone
anyone
wall
here
be
for this,
constructed.
too.
Purpose. It's what resulted in us defining a stone wall.
Pea stone, yeah.
It was this project.
We should have a lot of information on this.
I don't think there's anyone here for it. Is anyone? No. So we can just continue it.
So this is a partial COC for just a single lot, right?
Yeah, but that single lot includes this detention basin, so
Oh,
we need to
no.
come some kind of conclusion. I haven't gotten information that the easements for the maintenance have been recorded. I heard that they were, but I don't have them, so I think we need to continue it.
Who's requesting this, the attorney?
It was for a closing,
Yeah.
but I have been conferring with Merrimack Engineering on it, because they did the original plan. And have been getting responses, just don't have any documentation.
Sure.
That's first.
Okay, motion to continue?
I'll move
Continue.
that we continue.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1647, a modification request for 172 Summer.
All right, come on up. So I think I'll let you explain everything, but I would just note that everything proposed is outside of the subzones. There's two separate subzones on this property. To the back is to a vernal pool, and to the side is to an intermittent stream. But everything that is being proposed is approvable because it's outside the subzones.
Can you spin that?
No,
No?
unfortunately.
Well, according to Jen, there's really not a hell, unless you feel like talking.
Well, no, I mean, I think he should let you know what
Yeah.
there's a significant,
Yeah.
significant in that there's a number of things, so you
Yeah.
should know what they are.
So this is a modification of a previous approval, I think before it came in, and it was signed as a minor modification when, in the front, on that plan shown in blue, was the subject of the previous approval, which was reconstruction of a stone wall at the front of the property. In order to get the utilities in, we broke the stone wall, so we reconstructed a stone wall. And I wanted to build a little stone wall, which was a retaining wall, on the side of the garage entrance. So that was approved before. And now, as I'm getting close to this 2-year-plus project that I've been banging away at, because I said, geez, I need a walkway, and I got to get a garage driveway in, and because I want the walkway to be ADA compliant so that it doesn't have any steps in it, I got to get it back 30 feet, so it's a ramp that is 5% grade. That takes me to the back end of what was the outside the patio area. So I'm asking for the patio area to be expanded somewhat so that I could get the walkway to the back of it, plus put some patio behind the little greenhouse. So when the seedlings come out of the greenhouse, I have a warm place to put them in pots before I plant them in the beds. And the other thing that I'm asking for is a little 3x3 pad on the resource side of the building for the propane tank to be constructed. And the last thing you'll see on the back of the property, we found these big boulders, and I would like to partially bury those boulders and create a little water pool back there, a little water element. So that's what that pile of rubble is at the back part of the lot. And I have suggested a deer fence in the back and 2 cedar fences, one on each side by the outside, again, outside the 50-foot no-build area, so that the backyard would be enclosed.
So I only have one problem with all this. Have you ever extended this order of conditions?
I know it's coming up. I haven't had it, right?
I
It's
have it as,
I
it was
think it's
issued in
July-
2015, so it's...
July 13th, July 17th as the date.
No, it's June 25th, 2015 it was issued. So it expired June 25th, 2018.
So then I need it extended, too.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Can't extend that expired order.
I mean, I'm sorry, because I should have caught that earlier. And we should have, I mean, generally, we've been sending letters, so you should have gotten a letter saying that it needed to be extended.
I'm sorry, I didn't get a letter, so whatever I have to do, I would like to get the propane tank in, so because I can't fire up the utilities in there, and I can't get the plumbing inspector to sign off on the plumbing on final.
I think you could probably do a friendly EO to do that. But I think the other things probably need to be refiled under an RDA. And then he just does a certificate of compliance.
We've got something in flux. I mean, the cleanest thing is, if you got all that other stuff done, he could have come in and close that order out, get a certificate of compliance. Even though it's expired, get a compliance.
Right.
Then you could, for everything he's proposing here,
Could have been a
are
small
small
project.
projects. They're all small projects.
Right. So,
But you can't issue a small project on something that has an open order.
so you have an as-built, right, of this already? Or it
I have an
hasn't been?
as-built of the foundation and the building, and, you know, that Christensen and Sergi did. And so I've just been marking up on their as-built plan.
So the cleanest thing outside, actually, we've been allowing, and our general is if they're outside of the 50-foot propane tanks can be installed, just because they're basically not, this isn't a buried propane tank, this is you putting
Sitting on a
tanks
3x3 pad.
standing next to the side of the house. So that aside, we can probably deal with that separately without an enforcement order, but would be to get your certificate of compliance, and then the rest of this becomes a small project filing for which you could do a sketch plan of all of it on your plan, on your as-built.
All right, so here's the thing, you have to schedule masons like 6 months in advance. he's coming in 2 weeks, and I wanted to put the walkway in, and the walkway is right on the edge of the 100-foot, right? But when you get back to the top, it's within the 50 to 100-foot line. I mean, I don't want to do something and then, oh geez, when I file my RDA, they say, oh geez, you're doing something, you already did something that you weren't supposed to do. And I should have realized, but I mean, I do have like 2 years plus of
Yeah, I have no issues.
weekly
Yeah.
inspections
And the
from my...
site's fully stabilized, there's grass everywhere now, so it's...
How long is it going to take you to complete all this work?
September is when I...
If we gave you an enforcement order to complete the project and apply for an order, certificate of compliance,
By-
no later than October 1st, can you do that?
Absolutely.
I make a motion, we order such an enforcement order.
Yeah, because
There's no other way around this.
I second it, yeah.
Okay. All in
Wait,
favor, say
where
aye.
are
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
EO by October 1st.
By October 1st.
By October 1st means we have to have the request for certificate of compliance and the as-built plan, not the work done, right?
Right.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Wait till you get that from me before anything happens, okay?
Is that going to be within 2 weeks?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. The agenda. 242-1735 modification request, 1429 Osgood Street.
Okay, so I'm presenting this one. So they have some proposed modifications to their site plan. I'll let them go into detail, but basically they are taking a planting bed that's within the 100-foot buffer and replacing it with asphalt. But then they're offsetting that loss of impervious cover by expanding the rain garden in the southeastern portion of their property, which if you scroll down a little,
Oh, is that, I think it's on another, is it on another site?
I think it should be on that one. Yeah, it's C.
Oh, there it is.
C, yeah, that's where they're offsetting it, so there's no change in impervious cover net. But yeah, I'll let you guys take it over.
Well, you explained it best. There's not much to it.
There's the loading areas moving too, but that's just a switching of parking spots for loading area?
Yes.
Correct?
Yep. We just need a loading dock on that side, so to accommodate, we switched over the striped area with the parking spots, and then added to the plant bed where C is in
Did you
the
have to add
back.
plantings, or was that grass?
That was grass.
Yeah, but I think it was it was seed, that didn't have the plantings in it, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
right, yep.
Yeah, so it ends up being the same amount of impervious surface.
Impervious space.
And you guys are gonna institute this permit soon, right? DEP sign up and, because we
Jen,
really-
we were ready 2 weeks after we,
I know,
we've
but,
had some struggles with
Okay.
the engineering, yeah.
Okay.
We're 100% done with everything on that list,
excellent.
so.
Because they're trying, yeah, they're trying to run an operation and institute an order of conditions at the same time, but if we just got the order started, I'd feel a lot better about what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Questions?
The modification, I have none.
Al?
I agree with Jen's desire to get this thing running. I am probably.
All set, Mr. Chairman.
You can't tell if it's the operation or the improvements going on at the same time.
I think,
That's right, that's what
things look a lot
it's-
better out there
it's-
now, but when I
Yeah.
was by there last, and I've been going from down 125 quite a bit these days, so things have much improved. I feel like, are you on good terms with the building inspector now as far as how the site's
Oh, yeah.
working out?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah, I think there was some confusion. We didn't start any construction there,
no,
you
that's
know?
not,
So we're looking to get this going as quick as you.
It's just like, when you go by and you look, you go, what are they doing? But
Yeah.
you're running an operation, I understand that.
Yeah, yep.
Which also is in conflict with some of the planning board things. So I think we, like, if everything were just going and we had site monitors out there and things were happening, we'd,
Yeah, if we get this approval, we're ready to go in for a building permit tomorrow,
okay.
so.
You have questions?
No question.
Sean?
No, sir.
Doug? Motion?
Move that we grant the minor modification as requested.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. That's good. Next one is a partial bond release for 242-1729, 213 Berry Street.
So this was what do you want to call it, a reconstruction of a rehab of a house out on Berry Street. And all has gone according to plan. Any changes that the applicant proposed, he came to us and got modifications for. There were some propane tanks put on the far side of the house, some fencing put around that. I haven't really had a chance to prepare, they weren't really, the house was there, so it wasn't like they were building something new. And I haven't had a chance, I don't think Ben has either, to compare the proposed to the as-built, but I really don't have much concern. Ben's been monitoring, they've been monitoring. I think there's only 2 shrubs in that they're supposed to monitor for 2 years?
1 year.
1 year,
When
1
they
year.
were filed, they were put in September, right, Jonathan?
No, this-
September,
oh.
October
Yeah.
Last year.
of
You know.
2018.
So
Jen,
this
how much
October, they'll be done.
Bond money do we have?
What do we have, how much bond was there on this?
2000.
2,000, so I think you can give them,
We never go more than half.
I would say on
I
this,
know
we're
it's difficult
monitoring
for 2 shrubs.
2 shrubs. I mean, I guess, and we have the as-built plan,
And it's in compliance and everything else is stabilized otherwise.
right, so they need to remove erosion controls. I guess what they worry about is that
Oh,
someone
500
won't
bucks.
come back and seek the certificate of compliance, and then it becomes
Normally, we don't
problematic.
do more than half, but in this case, I would think about bending to 500.
But I think it would be, right, adequate to leave 500 and,
Okay. Only can go by your recommendations.
Was that your recommendation?
that's my
That
recommendation.
was my recommendation off the top of my head, so we're in
Okay.
agreement.
Okay, Al?
No questions.
Jeff? Sean?
Nope.
Doug, no question. All right, we have a motion we're going to
So
get a
moved.
partial bond release,
Second.
and the commission has decided $500.
No, release
Release
1,500.
release 500, you know what I mean?
I got you.
And the monumentation's out there too, right? Posts and markers?
Monumentation is out there, so with the soil stabilized, does that mean that I can
Remove the erosion control, yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to authorize that too? I know Al had a comment when I sent this around about you wanted the as-built plan before they removed the erosion control, but you had sent me an email when I
Yes.
consulted the chair and vice chair. So
Yes.
now that we have that, can they remove the EC?
Yes, the point, I think I made it pretty clear on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
So-
thank
And
you.
remove EC.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
It takes a couple weeks to process that, so it might be a month before you see a check.
Okay.
All right. Then, before we go to enforcement orders, is there anybody here for 350 Winthrop Ave?
Yeah, we tabled that, right?
Want to
Yes.
give them their photos?
Still don't see him here.
Nobody's here.
So I move that we keep it tabled and take care of the rest
Yeah,
of the
we
people.
can continue it at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Let's-
Enforcement order is 503 Boston Street.
So there's going to be two properties that both did tree cutting.
We already discussed it.
For 503.
These don't have site plans, so I'm just gonna leave it.
So,
So this is a couple of weeks, or a few weeks ago, when I was responding to tree cutting complaint at 515 Boston. And then I noticed that the neighbor, 503, had also cut some trees. So I went to their property as well and took some pictures, and we issued a violation letter. They really only cut a couple trees, and these were, they were barely within the 100-foot buffer zone of the wetland that's next to her driveway. Judging from the aerial imagery on MapGeo, which isn't official, but it gives a rough estimate, they were like plus or minus 80 feet away from that. And then I also noticed that there was brush dumping going on in the wetland adjacent to her driveway.
In the wetland?
In the wetland, yep. You know, the homeowner stated that she'd been dumping fallen tree limbs and yard waste in there for a number of years. So in the violation letter, we just required that that material be removed from the wetland no later than May 31st. We also said no additional tree cutting should take place until after we had this meeting. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know you had a question about
Yeah, I
tree cutting
actually-
with National Grid and your power lines.
Yes, actually, a couple years ago, National Grid was coming down the street to cut limbs down, and they were supposed to come into the property where the line goes into the yard, and they were supposed to cut, you know, their limbs are intertwined in the wires, so they had never done that. But what I wanted to, you know, say to Ben too is, I don't think he believed me when I told him I had plot plans. I've owned this property for 25 years, and I had got the wetland maps back then. And they had told us that it wasn't wet where we were, so I didn't believe that, you know, anything that I was putting there was in violation. And actually these, like, we mow our leaves, we don't, like, blow and dump, although there was a dump of leaves there from the corner of the house that we had just raked, like, the day before he probably came. But the storm that knocks the trees down that are in that area, I just put the branches on the side of the driveway. It's not that I'm like going out there to fill or do anything intentional, so I just wanted to, you know, clear that, let you guys know it wasn't like something I was doing to be.
Take a deep breath. I don't think we think you did it intentionally.
Right, well,
We think you did it by mistake.
Yeah, so.
But we just want to, one, educate you, and two, clean it up. That's all we're looking to do.
Okay, yes, and as a layman sitting here listening to, you know, what you guys are saying is like, just blows my socks off talking about these pools and these buffer zones. Like, I don't even have a clue, honest, you know, so.
Let us be the scientists.
So.
Joe?
No, I don't think it's intentional at all. I mean, it's inadvertent, but I think, you know, educating a homeowner is an important thing to do, which is part of this process, and then to get it cleaned up and prevent it from happening again. That's what we're looking to do. Unless I'm missing something here, it seems to be just that, nothing more. I would be real careful if there are any other things that you need cleared in the area that ever in question, just call staff and they'll come out and give that guidance. But anything that's been cut down, the stumps are still in the ground, you probably want to leave the stumps in the ground and not grind them out and rip them out. Because if they're that close, we just don't want to make things worse.
Right, and like, I'm sure that, you know, Ben saw some things that are probably like 3 feet up, and that's, I mean, I brought pictures of the snowstorms that we had, the branches are all the way down, and, you know, in order to, you cut some of them, and then they, you know, snap at you.
So my last piece of it for clarification is just from Ben is, so I've been nice, but is there an awful lot of work that needs to be done? Is there something that I'm missing here, or?
I mean, really, it was, I could only count like two or three trees that had been cut, and they were right on the edge of the buffer zone.
Okay.
So in terms of restoration, I don't think that there's anything that needs to be done
But
there.
cleaning up the stuff that's in the wet area.
I mean, I put a picture of it on there.
Have you been able to get that out of there yet?
I was able to pull some of the stuff out, and then Ben suggested I call some tree companies or some professionals to
Or
like
just,
try
yeah,
to get some.
contractor.
Yeah, because like a lot of this stuff has been there from like decades. I mean, that's not a lie. You know, and the stuff that's on top is probably from that snowstorm that was like.
I think it's more the big stuff that we want gone. Like, when you go out there, it's really the branches and the big stuff that makes it look like a place that someone would go dump additional. I think maybe the other thing is put up a couple of the wetland markers, and that might, on the tree line. Her house, from no fault of her own, was constructed, or the wetland moved closer, but, you know, here's her driveway and here's the wetland. It's not like.
I think Joe's question was is there more trees that you want to cut?
No, we don't cut any trees.
Oh, you didn't cut any trees?
No, we did, the trees that were cut that day were because we were told that they would be compromised. They were compromised trees. We've had 2 trees fall on our house, on our roof there in the past 20 years.
So you're not planning on cutting any more trees?
No.
Okay.
I think
That's
this is the
what I
one where the
think.
tree cutter was from New Hampshire as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
Our-
last
our
piece was,
favorite.
whatever cleanup you want, make sure we can put a timetable that's reasonable, that can be done. And I think the monuments, the medallions are a great idea. That's all I have.
All set.
I reinforce what Mr. Lynch has stated. Deb? Sean?
Does this green area depict where the wetlands are on the
Yeah,
property?
roughly, yep.
And
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So you're aware of this now, and that they come in
Well-
the backyard as well?
According to what, he gave me now, but like I said, I brought my thing from the town that we
That's
bought
just
the house.
that doesn't have it.
Yeah, in the back though, so what they told us, we got 2 of them. So this is a wetlands map, this is a plot map, so they said line them up, so we lined them up. Do you wanna look at it? I mean, You
So,
do?
Yeah, that's,
wetlands change pretty quickly.
Which, yeah, so
Believe it or not. So, I know, that's why you said, I think you
right.
got nervous to pull out your old stuff that you saved, and you felt comfortable, but still, that's just so obsolete now, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
All it takes is one family of beavers in the neighborhood, you
Yeah.
change everything.
Yeah, and like I had said to Ben before, they had told, at the time, that, like I said, 25 years ago, they told us, if you got pine trees growing in there, it's not wet. I mean, that was the way it was maybe back then, that's what they told us, I'm not gonna lie. But, and we don't typically cut down trees, they fall,
we gave her a copy of that.
they fall down.
So when you talk about wetland markers, you talk about in the back as well?
Yeah, just sort of, I mean, around the edge of your yard, we have some wetland markers we can get to that you would just post on some large mature trees, and that just informs you, not now, but if somewhere else were to buy the house 20 years down the road,
Yeah.
it would inform them too that maybe they should be thoughtful about what they did there.
But my question is, it'll include the area in the back
It
as
does,
well?
I would say just along her cleared yard, because I don't think she needs to go into the woods to put up wetland markers. The yard isn't cleared,
So that's wooded back there?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Doug? No. All right, so how much time, Ben, do you think that she needs?
I had initially put May 31st as the deadline for clearing out the debris. Does that sound reasonable to you guys, or?
Do you
How
want to
much
add
time
2
do you
weeks
need?
to
Do you need
it?
more time?
I'd rather put a deadline on September 1st, because honestly, if it dries out a little bit, it's probably the better time to rip the stuff out with little damage.
Yeah, actually, that's actually what, I had a tree guy come and he said, the wetter it is, the worse it is.
I'd rather do it in the summertime.
And it's it is dry in there in the summer, believe it or not.
Yeah,
The
with the
new date
markers.
And the
too.
wetland markers.
Okay,
Right,
so
we'll do
change it to September 1st for the
Okay.
deadline?
That's my opinion.
No, that's fine.
Everybody's nodding.
That's fine.
And then Ben will add the wetland markers in, and if you can just issue an amended tonight.
Yep.
Motion?
To issue the enforcement order as amended.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. You're all set. Thank you. Next one is an enforcement order for 515 Boston Street.
Okay. So this is the one that I was initially responding to.
So we're-
That's the
These are the ones you gave us, right, Ben? They're
Yeah,
in the
take
packet?
the old ones back and we'll put them in the file, or you got the file.
Yeah, these are the ones in the packet.
All right. So yeah, this is the tree cutting complaint that I was initially responding to. There were multiple large pine trees that were recently cut down in the front yard. Some of these cut trees were within 100 feet of a wetland that's on the opposite side of Boston Street. And those trees that fall within the buffer zone were mostly the trees that are on their, like on the front edge of the homeowner's front yard, like on the edge of the yard closest to the street. So when we issued the violation letter, same thing with the 503 Boston, we just stated that no additional tree cutting should take place until after this meeting happens. And I know you had stated that you were planning on putting some vegetation in the front yard anyways to replace those trees.
Across the
the front of the yard, where the rock wall is, or bushes, we just haven't decided yet, and we're still trying to grow the lawn back that was damaged
Yeah.
from the removal and just from the pines being there before you, there was no lawn to begin with.
Yeah. So I just thought it would be a good idea for us to request a formal restoration plan for the front yard.
That's where I was just gonna go, but I wanna understand where that buffer zone is. I know the resources across the street, so that's a good thing.
Yep.
How far into the yard does the 100-foot buffer zone extend? Is it just?
I mean, I didn't go out and measure, I didn't measure it with a tape in the field because I would have to like bring it across Boston Street. But just judging from Map Geo, the front yard starts like 75 feet, 75 feet from the resource
I
area.
just want to make sure that if we're looking for restoration plans, only within jurisdictional area. Everything
Okay.
he does in his front yard outside of jurisdiction, it's his own
Yeah,
landscaping he does.
certainly a lot of trees were cut
That area
outside of
that-
our
so it's-
jurisdiction.
It's not the whole front yard?
No, it's just
in
the
the resource.
just the area closest to Boston Street is in our jurisdiction, just that 25, roughly 25 feet of his yard that's closest to Boston Street.
So that's what we want to see, and then I also want any other proposed activity besides restoration of landscaping, if you will. I'm sure he's going to want to either grind out or dig out the stumps, and then protect that edge while all that's going on.
Well-
That's where the vulnerability is, the erosion off the yard into the
Right, well,
street
we,
and across the street.
we already did the stumps,
Yeah,
so we
they're all
cut down the
brown.
tree,
So these are all.
because we did not
These are
know.
old pictures, all right. So stumps are already out.
I guess, I don't. were
Yeah,
they there?
stumps were out before we
Stumps
know
are
it.
still
I
there.
went on vacation and came home, and there was a card in my front door, which we never use, saying stop, and by then, everything had been stopped.
At that point, they were just taking
Stump
the
where I
cut
was
that
there,
were on
17.
in the yard out.
Oh, no, the stumps are in the photos and the cut trees, so you definitely did it.
Stumps
after.
were there April 17th when I visited.
Yeah, we didn't get to see the card until a couple days later, because it was in the front door, and we come through the garage way.
And I was away that week, looking at colleges, so. I guess my question then is, if we have to restore or plant something 25 feet from the edge of Boston Street, 25 feet from my rock wall, what's the marker?
I think it's from the edge of Boston Street, right?
Yeah, that's where I measured it off of in the aerial imagery.
So let's talk about that, because we're trying to get clarity, because Jen's only helping us as much as she can, but that's a limited time.
I was out at the site.
The, under jurisdiction, it's only those areas that are jurisdictional, so that's all you have to be meeting our requirement on. Now, is that, does that,
Yep.
since the resource area is on the other side of the
Yeah.
street, we would consider this a small project.
Right.
So we don't need a precise wetland line. This generalization of where we think the line is, 25 feet off the edge of the street, is adequate. Correct? So let's start with that. In that area, we just want to see that strip 25 feet off the back of the roadway, what you're proposing to do, based on its current condition now, and to bring it to completion, and what you're going to do to protect stuff from running across the street. That's
I
all
don't
we
think
need.
there's much concern for stuff, right? They have
You gotta
a,
rough it out, the second stump. Say, that second stump.
It's already gone.
100 feet. I know, but I'm just using it as a landmark.
oh,
Well, which-
I see what you're saying.
To say the 25 feet,
Yeah.
that looks like approximately 25 feet from the road. Don't you think?
I mean, it's a legitimate violation, but it's a minor violation, so you, by virtue of the street being in
Because
between,
this is
you're in some
Right,
pretty
I mean,
decent shape.
you couldn't have done, cut down
I
trees
would
if
say
we
you
were
did
in
25
violation
feet.
of wetlands that are across the street in a neighbor's yard that we
That's
can't
from here to here's
see.
more than 25 feet.
And we plan on planting across the front of the yard. What we would like to avoid right on the edge of the driveway, because that was the main reason we started
Oh, I thought that
by the
was the
tree
road.
clearing is
Right,
right
so
now.
in your mind, you know what you want to do,
Yeah.
right? Right, so what can you do to sketch out to us and submit to us a document requesting under a small project to do this work? We need some sort of sketch. I don't know if you have a plan of your land already, or maybe you have area photography.
I think they just leave it as the EO and just, they get us the restoration plan by a certain date.
I'm trying to give them the standard of what kind of plan we
Yeah.
need, and that's the deadline I want to give them.
Okay.
So, and again, we don't need a full-blown plan surveyed in, because it's a small project.
What they could take is an aerial photograph,
And
kind of
sketch in what they wanna do.
put the area that you intend to plant, and then give us some kind of written description of what you want to put there.
And how long is it going to take you to be able to get that back to us?
Probably pretty quickly, I just have to figure out how to get the plan together for you.
So we said by July 1, you could do that?
To have it completed, or just a plan with
Just
what
the
we
plan?
want?
Just the plan.
Because once we get that, we're going to give you a deadline to get the work done.
Just a restoration. Yeah, I can do that in July.
July 1. All right, that's what I'm trying to get at, all right. I'm all set.
So what date did we say for the
July
restoration
1.
plan?
Submit restoration, okay, no later than July 1.
July 1st?
And do I need to come back here to submit it, or can I just submit it to your offices?
You can submit it and we can approve it.
Yeah, you do it with the office.
All right, so we need
Depends what you submit.
a view of the yard theoretically,
Yep.
considering taking into account 25 back.
I don't
And
think-
then what we're planting exactly, or
Yeah.
how many we're planting.
Right, and you don't have to plant the whole 25 feet from the road. I think if you're going to grass some of it, that's fine. I think what the commission's just looking for, how you're going to stabilize
Stabilize
that
it.
area.
Yeah. So if we get the restoration plan by July 1, let's have the restoration work complete by September 1.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Any other questions?
I would say by September 15th, just in case the summer's really hot and dry, you want to give them like a little time.
How about October 1st?
October 1st, even better. If it's hot, you don't want to go plant stuff.
And you'll be sending us something in the mail?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
they're going to just issue an amended EO. You get it all done, and this is all done.
Okay.
Need a motion?
Anybody else?
Any other questions? No, I can see
Everybody's
that
pretty happy, so.
they were just shaking their head.
So, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Another enforcement order, 2053 Salem Street.
So this is the restoration plan, which, Ben, I'm sorry, didn't have time to review, so you're going to be presenting to everybody for the first time.
Great. Good evening, Ben Osgood Jr., Ranger Engineering. Here representing the owners of 2053 Salem Street. We were here previously for their tree cutting that they did over the winter, and needed to have a restoration plan by May 1st, which we submitted on May 1st. So we've gone out, I had Mary Rimmer re-delineate the wetlands. It had been delineated by Andover Consulting for the purpose of dividing off a lot. But I don't know who did it. We couldn't find out who did the delineation. So we just had Mary Rimmer redelineate the whole wetlands, which is a little intermittent stream that runs down between 2053 and 2051, and then under the roadway. And it was a little area that extended over towards the house on 2051 Salem Street, went very close to the yard and the driveway, and that's where they accessed to cut these trees that were up on the hill. When they went in there and did the disturbance, they altered 740 square feet of bordering vegetative wetland as we delineated it after it was disturbed. Obviously, she used the soils to do that. They also cut 6 large diameter trees, 12 to 20 inches, that were within 25 feet of the wetlands. They took 2 large trees that were in the wetlands in that 740 square feet. And they took 13 other trees that were in the buffer zone, but between 25 and 100 feet. So we have proposed replanting the trees that were within the 25-foot area. We did not propose replacing the trees that were in the area between 25 and 100, only because he took those down because he wanted to allow more light into his house. He'd like, I mean, the owner is amenable to planting some trees. Obviously, it's going to take a while for them to grow and shade his house again, but he would like to do some additional work on the property where the White House is, installation of a septic system and taking down some additional large pine trees. So we had proposed the replacing in the 25-foot zone with white and red oaks. We have 6 total shown, also some within the wetland area. We'd like to put a row of white pine between the wetland area and the existing yard, and then shrubs within the wetland area
And we're also proposing to increase as compensation, provide 1,525 square feet of new wetland area that's planted, some red maples, high bush blueberry, and winterberry. We'd seed the wetland area with a wetland seed mix, and then the upland areas, we've chosen the logging road mix that you can get at New England Wetlands, figuring it would be more appropriate for an area that's kind of a forested area, shaded, and so on. So that's the plan in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Joe?
Pretty well thought out, but I don't think White Pine's anything that I'd like to see put back in there. They're only gonna be a nuisance in the long run. So if you could, up some of the other species that would have an equal chance of surviving, that would be a better choice, in my opinion. What are you putting in the wetlands?
So we have the winterberry, the high bush blueberry, and red maple, which I didn't mention, I forgot.
Just a couple comments, just before you make your comments, because this is endangered species habitat too. So, and also if the cutting that did, much like Hollow Tree Lane, for the cutting that's within your jurisdiction, but he wishes to keep, should be an after-the-fact filing of some variety, not just he gets to keep it because he cut it first kind of situation.
Good distinction.
Yeah.
They won't tell us what the priority habitat is.
I don't think it really matters, but
Chances are it's Blandings, and
they should have
need
some
that upland. They need that upland
discussion, right. And the vernal
cover.
pools and the other things, because you'll recall on some of the adjacent lots, there's protected area put aside in this area. Are there plantings way up here too, in the buffer zone, in the 25?
Yes, they went way up.
Yeah.
So there's a limit of clearing, and that's where it's really cleared. They ran the skidder up in there, but then they kind of went into the woods, dropped a tree, and pulled it out with a winch. So it's really not, there's no earth disturbance there, and they might have dropped the tree right into the cleared area. So there was just, they pulled the log out. So that's why there's some, especially down up on the top left, there's some trees that are way outside of the limit of clearing. I believe they dropped those into where they cleared and then just pulled the stump into that area. There's still a lot of slash left up here and some logs. They took some of they had a pile of logs that was here, but there are still logs and slash left. And, we've shown in the kind of the sequence to take that out first. All the work would be done by hand. They'd have to drag it out.
I also think
before they did the
you've
restoration.
taken a little liberty with the 25-foot no disturbance zone on the side of the driveway, because they cleared there too, and you're not proposing to restore any of that?
Well, it was grass before.
Okay, I'll have to look at aerials for that. I'm not 100% sure.
I believe the grass went right through the wetlands. If you look,
Up to where the white pines are, you mean? Where
yeah,
you're
I think
proposing the white pines?
if you look
I mean, it's up there.
right here, this tree line kind of came straight through down to here. They didn't cut anything along the road. That was where, this was kind of grass in here. It was, remember and Deb, you reminded me there's no wetland that's a bad wetland. I said it was kind of a wetland of little value. It was an old lawn that had grown up, hadn't been maintained. The woman here was elderly, and it was just, it's goldenrod and, some wetland grasses that had just established themselves because they didn't mow it anymore. But
This
it,
requires a natural heritage file. And that hasn't
MISA
happened yet,
filing,
right?
yeah. Right, so they need to do a MISA filing.
So I think,
We allowed that to be concurrent with what was going on. So I think there needs to be a MISA filing. I think there needs to be an after-the-fact RDA for anything they wish to keep. And then I think the 25-foot no disturbance zone restoration, thank you for the additional wetland. I get why that makes sense to kind of continue that around. But the 25-foot no disturbance zone needs some beefing up with, is it red maple that's proposed in there? It's kind of hard to see.
there's red maple in the wetland areas.
Okay, so what are this, on the sort of, if there was a north to this plan, which I don't know where that is, but let's
Red oak,
pretend
white
top is
oak.
the north. What-
It's
Are those
white
just
oak.
4 shrubs in that entire no disturbance
Those
zone?
are trees.
Those are
Inch and a half
trees.
caliber trees, right.
I think you need some understory in there. So that, just in a quick look at this plan, I think there's more to do, and we can talk about the restoration, but those are just my initial comments before you go through.
I always look at what's kind of adjacent to what was disturbed.
Yeah, I'm not proposing.
Not a lot of understory here, but it's a
Especially,
forest with,
it was forested, right, but since you don't have a forest anymore, you're gonna need a little bit of
we can
both.
do that. Yep.
Al, any questions?
I have no questions.
Yep. Sean? Nope.
All set.
All right, so what's the plan here? Now we have an EO.
The original violation was to order them to come here by tonight and do this. They've
They're-
done
right.
that. So they're in compliance. I think we have 2 more thresholds of ordering them when to file the MISA filing, and that some floating date of within 30 days after us receiving notice, that to appear back before us to modify the ultimate plan.
Well,
'Cause
it's
I
a
want to do
file-
it,
So I think that we amend the enforcement order to require them to notify MISA of what they've done. Although I did that sort of, I think it needs to be formal, a natural heritage of what they've done, and that they submit an after-the-fact RDA, that's what we did at Hollow Tree Lane,
okay?
for work within jurisdiction that they wish to keep in its sort of state that they've turned it into, which is the tree-cleared area.
So to do that, we would want that RDA after whatever determination comes out of
I
natural
think
heritage.
we did them concurrently last time. I just think you should set a date by which they need to
So I'm trying to
submit the
hone in,
after the
I'm trying to
fact.
hone in on when that date is.
So I would give them a month for the after the fact RDA. MISA will take longer, but again, we're not,
So I don't have any problem at all with forwarding this plan to MISA as it stands, and just, I don't know that they have a formal requirement as to what I have to submit for
you have to do a
enforcement
MISA filing.
order.
And so what we got on Hollow Tree Lane when that happened, when they
Yep.
basically clear cut like 2 acres of forest out there, or an acre, right? An acre? It was pretty big. But anyway,
3 different lots.
they filed it, and we got a no-take letter, so, or a,
No take.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
you're talking about the original lot. that-
Yeah,
that we went-
so
yeah.
this is sort of that same situation. It took a while before we could get to the end of what was gonna happen,
Right.
but
Right.
So my only, and I understand everything you just said, and I know exactly what we do with Hollow Tree. That worked out great, because there was no take. So my fear on this is, we're gonna get a revised plan under the RDA. They're going to, in good faith, and we're in good faith, going to approve it.
Well-
They're gonna build it.
no, we didn't shut down that RDA process until we got that,
So leave it open.
right,
So as long as they file it, we can leave it open pending their final result.
right.
Right.
Okay.
And then maybe under the EO, we can authorize the restoration to start just sort of waiting to see what happens with the cleared area, whether you need to do more restoration, in which case we'd have to go
Because
along
if it is
with
a
that.
take, they're gonna tell us exactly what
What
the
they
problem
want,
is,
right.
and the whole planting plan may be completely rethought out.
And the only reason, now you recall that there's this lot, the lot next door, and the lot you just approved to be developed, and Natural Heritage was pretty clear that there shouldn't be any segmentation of a project out there, so that basically what they've just done is what Natural Heritage told them not to do, without a filing. So basically, now you're gonna do that filing.
Understood.
Al, any questions?
Not at this time.
So
Sean? Doug?
I just recommend amending the enforcement order to require them to do everything we just discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Can I ask a question?
No.
Can they start to remove the logs by hand? I think they kind of cut some of them up and they're lying there chunked up. Is it something that they could do between now and the time?
They have erosion control, and
The
I
erosion
don't
control
think,
is in, there's no runoff per se. You know, they put the erosion control in before the snow was melted, so
Who's gonna remove the logs?
the homeowner
Ben.
has them there to cut up to use for firewood.
So
Is the
what
homeowner
does,
gonna
I
do
mean,
it, or-
realistically, what does remove by hand mean?
Yeah.
You go in there with a chainsaw, you chunk it
I
up.
mean, not a
and-
skidder,
They're gonna be-
but as a dump truck or pickup
They're
truck
gonna be
or?
cut in place is what they're gonna be.
Right.
They're not, are you saying skid them out or cut them in place?
No,
Which-
cut them in place and,
Just stockpile them right there, or put it in the back of his truck and haul
They
it down
just,
to his house.
they're mainly right down at the bottom where that wetland disturbance was. There's a big pile of logs there.
It's messy either way. It almost is better to skid them out.
No, again, I don't know what the species is there. We don't put equipment on the site
We'll hold off.
before the MISA
So-
filing.
The answer is
So
no.
his proposal to cut in place
Yeah,
is gonna make a mess.
You're saying we
they're
shouldn't
right
have
down
all
at the
If you've
road.
ever used a chainsaw.
They're right down at the road. They're in that area where I asked them if the 25-foot.
Confused me there.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be sawdust, it's gonna have to be cleaned up and that sort of thing, but.
Well, if it's an estimated habitat, everything's bad, right?
I don't, you can say no. I'm
Yeah.
not.
I'm just asking.
We'll hold off. I don't have a problem with that.
Let's do it,
Yeah, be prudent until they,
Okay.
So it's 1 month for the after-the-fact RDA, the MISA filing, and beef up the restoration plan.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor, say aye. Opposed? That's
All right. Thank you.
thank you, Ben Jr.
Okay. It shouldn't be too much, just amend it's already written.
We're not going to allow that log removal by
No,
hand.
no work, no work on the sites. The cease and desist still holds.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this question was generated.
On the next one, I am going to recuse myself.
Is the understory under this tree
Nancy, the vice
plantings, is
chairman,
that,
is going to take over.
is that good?
As soon as Mr.
Okay.
McDonough comes back.
Well, he's gonna bring back a new plan. He's gonna beef up the restoration plan, so.
We're just gonna wait till Sean gets back in the room, then we'll start with 12:10, okay?
So they have copies of everything that you've submitted, but I didn't, there isn't anything to display or.
While we're waiting, I have a question. Is there anybody here for 350 Winthrop Ave?
Yeah, I think he had said he was gonna continue, so I'm pretty good with
Okay.
continuing at this point.
All right.
You wanna vote on that?
Yeah,
No, I had sent the document around, but we haven't discussed it formally, so I'd like to, if we get to discuss it, at least instruct that information to be passed on to the applicant.
Oh, okay.
So,
Do you wanna discuss it now?
Are you
or
talking
If we're about to continue, I want to discuss it now.
Yeah.
So we don't think they're coming, and we took it, if we tabled it. So at the last meeting, I had raised the question about the open stream versus the snow stockpile versus the treatment area. And I took Google Earth aerial photography imagery, and I overlaid, superimposed their proposal over the existing site. So what we're really doing, this is what I was trying to explain at the last meeting, if they're relocating the brook to avoid the back of the filling station garage building and kicking it out to an open swale, which is going to be treated as treatment, heading down directly to the Shawshing River, and if, in fact, DEP's already determined, and it is, that that other element is a perennial stream, it's perennial into a pipe, into an open perennial stream again before it gets to the Shawshing, right next to a snow stockpile.
Right.
So I believe what I've drawn up is they need to redesign this. I'm not sure if you got a chance to
Well,
look
I
at that.
don't, they don't necessarily need to redesign it, they need to I know, I went out and looked, and it's true, the snow stockpile comes right up to that area, and it's a mess, right? So that would all be melting out and basically flowing into a perennial stream. We don't want that to happen, but I don't think that negates the fact that they could do that. They would have to either start trucking snow away, have an alternative. You had mentioned maybe doing some kind of treatment between the snow stockpile
I
area.
think there's room for all of them, that's why I drafted up. So,
Right,
you know,
right.
if we continue it, I would like
I will
to
pass
have
that
this comment,
information
passed along in the
along.
sketch draft.
Yep.
Because we've now said it at 2 prior meetings, and we still haven't seen anything.
No, we only said it at the last meeting, and
I
then.
said it before here, but it got really dug my heels in the last meeting, and since that last meeting, I'm convinced that
Okay.
their proposal's inadequate.
Pass along Joe's comments, yep. I will do that. So, and then, do you want a motion to continue?
Anything else on that?
No, with that, we can continue it.
Need a motion to cancel.
In motion, yeah.
So we're going, with regard to, what's the address?
350 Winthrop Street.
350 Winthrop. The comments will be attached, and we need a motion to continue.
Deb just motioned.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it's continued. So on the agenda now, 1210 Osgood. This is continued from April 24th. At the last meeting, we gave some questions and instructions to the applicants, things that we needed information done, and both Joe and I, on different dates, visited the site. I visited Sunday. I met with Greg Hockmuth, and I was there with him for an hour and plus. And Joe, I don't know what date.
Friday afternoon, and same deal.
So-
Full perimeter,
So,
over an hour.
as a result, after my meeting, before I left Greg, we discussed some questions that needed to be presented to the applicants, and an email was generated on May 5th, and it's a one-page email. I think everybody, all the applicants have it, so it's fully disclosed. I think, unless I miss, I think you're prepared to respond to our request? Okay, so I'll ask everybody to hold any questions they have and let the applicants respond to the list of questions that we proposed, and then we can go from there.
What I'd like to do real briefly is introduce what we call our A-team here,
Yeah.
who we've engaged to.
We haven't had the A-team up to this point?
You have, but we've been supplementing them as we've gone along. So obviously, you know Joe Pesnoa, civil engineer record. He needs no introduction to this committee. Vern Kokoza from Sanborn Head, who is a geotechnical engineer who has been before the commission at the last few meetings. New to the group is Paul McManus, who's sitting in the center. He is the president of Ecotech. He is a professional wetland scientist and LSP. He consults on a regular basis for Concoms such as yours, and he's been engaged really to do a ecological risk assessment in response to the issues that were discussed 2 weeks ago. On the right here is Mr. Paul Lockwood, who's the founder and owner of LRT. He's over 20 years of dewatering and water treatment experience, former Concom member himself, and he's been engaged to design and execute a well point system, which gentlemen have had a chance to see in place, to collect the sediment-laden water and prevent it from reaching the wetlands. And what I'd like to do is really turn it over to Paul Lockwood to further explain that well point system and tell you how it's designed, what it's intended to do, and how he believes it's going to operate. And I believe in the course of that explanation, he'll address many of the questions that were raised in writing, and then following that, we'll have one of the other four gentlemen answer any questions that still are remaining, if that's okay with the commission.
Absolutely fine.
Okay.
Absolutely fine.
Paul, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, real quick, I have bios for everyone. Do you want me to
Just give
this?
me a copy, yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great.
So, Mr. Lockwood, you're going to be addressing calcite concerns with respect to the well points?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think the committee has been provided with pictures that were recently taken from the site, and in those pictures, it would actually probably help if you looked at it, because there is a picture of the well point system. That's it, ma'am. So, what
are they attached to, Dan? Do you know?
Are these the ones that Greg sent today?
Yes.
Yeah. So we just printed those tonight, you should have them.
So, there's a few pictures, but, you know, this one in particular is probably a pretty good picture of the well point system.
The second page.
Yeah, the second page. So what a well point system is it's a standard dewatering system. It's been around for about 80 years. It was developed in the 1940s. But essentially, it's a number of mini wells that are connected to a bigger pipe called a header pipe That's that pipe that's laying on the ground, and that's attached to a vacuum pump. And so essentially what it does is it actually, as a dewatering method, it sucks the water out of the ground like a giant straw. And what it does is it maintains that, as long as the well point pump is running, it maintains basically a dry wall within the radius and influence of all these well points. So what we did on this, for this project, is we put a row of well points. So you see there's sort of a long line. If you look at the picture, it's a long line of points, and the objective is to dewater and basically create a dry wall on the upgradient side of the wetlands. So in the areas where there was water entering into the wetlands, we were basically upgradient of the retaining wall. And we install these points there, and then we're going to, when we turn the system on, it'll basically collect that and create a dry wall, basically a buffer that won't allow the water to enter into the wetlands. Once the water comes out of the well point system, it enters into a treatment system that we've installed on site. That's been installed as of today. Inside the treatment system, the idea is to treat the water from solids and things like that so that it meets the turbidity standards that are set forth by the committee. And then that's discharged then to one of the discharge points that was established in the SWIP. So that's the objective that we have as far as that. In addition to the well point system, though, we've been involved, we've been retained, my firm has been retained by NRP to actually manage some of the surface water on site as well. So we've actually had a hand in that. So as of April 26, almost 2 weeks, we've been involved with that. And in that time, we've been involved with managing the surface water, dry out the surface conditions, and help with that, and then also establish this well point system.
You want to start it? I just had a couple of questions on what I saw when I did the site walk too. So, what I saw with this question is the advancement of the well points down. It's down below the bottom of the footing of that built retaining wall. You're actually taking it down below the in situ, the original grade, and getting it down there because you want to pull that water down as deep as you can, so nothing works its way under the wall. Correct?
Correct. We're trying to intercept the flow path, and we're trying to interpret where that flow path is. So part of what we did during the installation, these are drilled points. These are drilled in place. We actually collected some small soil borings as we were installing some of the.
So that's how you knew you were deep enough.
Yes, we did an analysis of where we needed to be. We also surveyed where the water level was with the water level indicator in the wells once they were established. And so we knew where we had to be. So we had a concept of what we were trying to do.
So, just so, I think I know the answer, but just so it's clear to the others, by getting that deep and by pumping out that water that's coming through the upgraded soils, the fill material and other things, and whatever leaches through that, you're capturing most of that water, if not all of that water, pumping it up, treating it in two means, right? You're treating it in the frac tank for set solids. You're also doing some chemical neutralization. And then you've got on your final discharge, I saw there was a small inline filter. Was that just final, is that for particles or is that for chemistry?
That's for, no, it's not for chemistry. It's just a sock filter. It's a bag filter.
Okay.
And so that's sort of that's the safety net. So if there's any carryover, that there shouldn't be any at that point, but if there is any that comes out of the final tank, that's there to catch it. And it's pretty small.
And that's in a canister.
It's in the canister.
And then at the very end of that is the bags.
It's a dirt bag on top of that.
And then the hay bales beyond that.
Yes.
Okay. And from the arrangements that I saw of the areas where the seeps were most prevalent, that's where the discharge areas were continuing to be, and that's where the concentration was centered for the well points, and you radiated out from that. How did you know how far to go? How do you think you got the influence extending far enough?
We tested where it was a judgment call based on experience in part. I went a lot farther than I thought I needed to go. We erred on the side of being super conservative. Each well point has its own independent valve on there, so in the event that, let's say we're outside of where the water is, and it's not an effective point, we can simply turn it off if we choose to.
Direct the suction back to the others.
Right, because the idea is that with this vacuum pump, you have to maintain a certain amount of vacuum. If you have a point that is sucking air, you're gonna minimize the effectiveness of the well point system. So that's why each one has a valve. So part of the routine operation is when you have a technician that's working this, is that they have to maintain the series of valves to keep your vacuum as high as you can. But to answer your question, we did install these with the idea of where we wanted to be from a target. So inside the well point, I didn't get into this level of detail, but there's a screen that's on the bottom. Inside the well point itself, there's also there's a stinger tube or a drop tube that goes down in the middle. We can raise and lower that tube to target different depths if we choose to.
So we had several levels of concern. You're addressing the first one of those, which is the ground, the surface water that gets into the ground as part of the construction project, getting down and reacting and interacting with the other soils and materials and finding its way through. Your effort is to contain and capture, pump and treat, and discharge clean.
Yes.
And there's the other aspects of what has already gone out the calcite and any other chemical that's within that water that may result in a bloom of calcite further downstream is not something that you're addressing. It's not within your wheelhouse, if you will.
That's me.
That's you. All right, so. The rest of these questions were the same types of ones I have, but they're on Al's list, so I'll let him ask it, and I'm sure they're all gonna, the answers will come out.
Well, it doesn't matter to me who asks them, but if you have the list there, under calcite concerns, the well point system, the operation and how it operates and what it's doing is understood. The questions are not what you're doing with the well point system now. The questions are more like, how long are we gonna need the well point system? There is buried crushed concrete at the base where you're pumping from. That's the origin of the calcite, as far as we know. The questions that when I was talking to Greg out there, and he didn't have answers for me, is, and I'll read them out loud, I know you have them. What type of assurances are there that the well points will stop the introduction of calcite into the wetland resource area? Has there been any baseline testing done to determine if the well points are working once they're put online? We're looking, I identified 3 spots out there when I was with Greg on Sunday where I want baseline testing done. If baseline has been done, I want continued testing done for, I want to know what exactly is coming out. There were sections where I observed seeps and bubbling taking place at the base of the wall. And there was what appeared to be a sheen on the water. I don't know that it's petroleum. I don't know that it's not. I want to know what that is. How is the calcite being removed, and how will it affect the chemistry in the wetland resource area? What's the calcite doing downstream, heading towards the river? There's so much of this that we don't know. Why don't we stop at that point, get some answers up to that point, and hopefully you can explain to us, what this is going to mean going forward.
Well, I think
Absent, I should say, absent excavating the site and digging it all out.
So before we get to the downstream part, there was a few parts I just wanted to answer some of those questions. But when we installed the points, the well points, we did an initial water level measurement of each of the wells that we had. And when we did that, we had an idea of how we want to manage it, how we want to manage the well point system. So we kind of know that it was working. We didn't discharge any water off the well point system, but we did bump it today. This morning we ran it for half an hour. So we have an idea of how it's going to operate once it's running full time. We only pumped out about 500 gallons. It wasn't a lot. That's all contained in the first tank. So we have an idea how it's going to work, but a lot of it is visual. So we outlined the initial plan that I think was also submitted to the committee as well, about how we're going to do this. And the way that these systems work, they're meant to be on all the time. They're meant to be run continuously, and it takes a while to achieve what they call steady state. Once you actually, the system's operating, and you're achieving your full amount of dewatering, if you will. So it takes a little bit of time to get there. In the event that some of the, it's not working as well as we'd like, we have supplemental points that we could put in and attach to the existing system. That was part of our contingency plan for this. And so we'll address that if we have to. I think what we have here is going to work as it's installed. I think we have a pretty conservative approach to it, but we can certainly add more if we need to. As far as how we address the downstream stuff, I mean, maybe you can speak.
Follow up with you. So what you're doing right now is you're intercepting or attempting to intercept any calcite that's flowing out and going into the resource area. You're trying to capture that water that's containing the calcite that's coming out from the deepest point of the project.
Yes.
I'd stop short of saying just the calcite. You're trying to intercept all of the water that's finding its way, previously was finding its way through or under the wall and beyond.
Correct.
By capturing it, you're capturing the water, the silt, the calcite, you're capturing everything that's within that water, preventing it from getting through the wall. And once you've captured it, you're then containing it and treating it on site.
Agreed, but it's the calcite that's the question here.
Yeah.
Because that's.
But by capturing all of the water, there's nothing getting through.
I think that's your assurance that you know, that the well points are working, are capturing the calcite impacted water, is that, you know, once the pumps are turned on and operating, you won't see much in the way of seepage. And if there is, Paul can always install an additional well point or two here or there, or hand excavated sumps. You know, we can, and it's one of these types of dewatering systems are such that they're dynamic. You know, you're continually tweaking them. You turn them on, see how they operate, and then continually optimizing. You know how much water you're drawing from each well, and if you need to install additional wells, you do it. But you're right. I think your assurance that, you know, that the calcite impacted water is not getting to the wetland it'll be visual. You know, you'll see that it's been.
I was puzzled by the irony of the worst wetlands violation in the world was projected behind us. Filling in an estuary to build a city.
So, since you're discussing it, and since you have our attention right now.
Okay.
You're one of the guys that I was thinking of at the site, because Greg thought it was you that ought to be able to tell us exactly what it is that's coming out. We know it's calcite, but what is the calcite doing chemically? What is the calcite doing to the resource area?
Well, I guess this is
because I understand you're intercepting it, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
For how long? How long are we intercepting this calcite?
Well, I think we'll be able to better answer that once we get the system running and see how it performs and behaves.
Which system? What system?
Well, the well point system.
The well point system, but the well point system is arguably not a permanent system.
Agreed, and we hope it's not permanent too. But I guess what we'd like to say is this: we'll start operating it, see how it performs, and we're in this for the long haul. I mean, we don't want to have further impacts to the wetland. That's the whole purpose of installing this, and we'll operate it as long as it needs to be. It's simple as that.
I think Al's point is one of threshold, and I understand it, and I have the faith to follow your lead on that. The thought always was, until the site is built, paved,
Right.
stabilized, and stop the introduction of water down into these layers where the problem continues to exist, we're gonna have problems. So the pump and treat was to do that absolutely during construction.
Yes.
What we don't know, and nobody knows, I don't think,
That's correct.
is for how long after construction.
That's
This thing
correct.
is built and done. We have a stormwater system that's designed to collect surface water and introduce it to the ground.
Correct.
And that water's gotta move through a horizon, move through this somehow, and it's
Correct.
gonna pick up these things in the future.
You're-
And we don't know.
You're absolutely right, the system, the good thing about the system that's been installed in the last 2 weeks is that, you know, it's a temporary, yes, but it can be operated for a long time. And we can run it, we can shut it down, we can turn it back on, and there are, you know, it can be, we have a lot of flexibility in terms of operation.
Suggest as this follow-up
Yep.
is, and you guys have already thought about it because you're far smarter than me, you guys have got to be thinking about what method you're going to use to determine the necessity of it in the future.
That's correct.
You know, when are you going to say, okay, construction's done, and what are we going to do to monitor, and what are we going to do to demonstrate that it's still needed or no longer needed?
That's correct.
And worse yet, is convince us.
Yes, we're already thinking about that.
So have we done a chemical analysis, a further chemical analysis on the calcite to tell us what exactly is in it and what impacts it's having to resource areas?
Well, there hasn't been more chemical analysis other than what we've already presented, all
Okay.
right? But in terms of, you know, what we know is in the water and its impact on the vegetation, I'll let Paul speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, my name's Paul McManus. I'm an ecologist, professional wetland scientist. And my task on this is not so much to deal with the question of what's coming and how do we control and treat it, but your real ultimate question is what has been the effect on the resource area?
And
So
what will continue to be the effect?
and what will continue, that's right, the existing and future. So I went out and walked the site on Monday with the site super, and then was lucky enough to actually, just as I was heading out, Greg Hockmuth arrived, so I put my boots back on and walked it again with Greg to kind of get his perspective. As you know, they've done some cleanup out there of where the calcite has formed a crust down below these areas, the bulk of it being in that one main seep area, but the other areas as well. In my opinion, that was good, but also there's more to do. And the calcite is not toxic in the normal sense that you think of toxicity. I do ecological risk evaluation at petroleum sites and chemical sites and PCBs and that sort of thing. So we're not dealing with the same sort of toxicity. But the issue here, and it does still remain out there, is that the calcite, as at least some of you have seen, crystallizes and forms a crust. So there are areas where there is a discernible crust that, you know, you can easily break it with your fingers, but it's there, it's physically there. And in my opinion, it's an impediment to biological activity where that occurs. So the intent is that when these guys get their system up and running and are controlling and eliminating or largely minimizing that the breakout in these areas, the standing water will drop or hopefully go away. And then the intent is to go out there with hand tools, certainly no heavy equipment, but with hand tools, and to continue that cleanup process and to remove anywhere where there is a calcite crust. Now, I make that distinction because there are areas outside of the channelized flow where this crust exists. There are areas where you can see a little bit of discoloration. My opinion is that unless there is, because there is very minimal toxic effect from this material, it's basically, it's relatively inert biologically, that it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to go out and clean up everywhere where there's the tiniest little bit.
Well, you're talking about the discoloration now?
Yes.
The amber color?
That's correct.
Do you know what it is?
I believe that it's just a very, very thin veneer of calcite that I suspect was formed there when the water was high for a brief period. There was a little bit of the calcite precipitated out, but it was not enough there, there's just not enough mass to form a crust and a biological impediment.
What's the basis of your opinion to believe that that's not calcite, or that it's not something?
No, I believe that it is,
But in lower concentration.
but in a very, very, you know, and
But
to
did
the,
anybody test it? Has it been tested?
well,
Those amber-colored samples, those areas where it looks?
Within the stream bed, that, I guess I'm trying to discern the difference between what you mean of the crust and that
The
the
crust
whole
looks-
stream
the
bed
crust
is
looks white.
covered with
oh, yeah, no, and that
the
is.
thick layer
and-
of something, and it's that amber colored stuff.
Yeah.
You're just talking about
But I'm
over the
asking-
leaf litter where things have sort of left a coating of
Right,
things.
the channel,
When the channel overflows.
The channel areas where there is, where you can go and poke your finger through the amber colored material, and then you get into the native soil. It's very clear demarcation. Wherever there is that demarcation, I'm recommending that be cleaned up.
Right.
I understand, I appreciate, but we still don't know what that is, right? It hasn't been analyzed.
It has, that was provided.
That was the material, my understanding
Yeah,
is that's the material that,
That's the calcite, that's the crystallized
The
calcite.
amber color?
The whitish.
The whitish color is, I get it,
Is a sediment.
but there was non-whitish color, it looked like gold or brown.
Well, we had a pretty, at the seeps, the worst seep, we had a very eroded channel.
Yep.
And off the edges of that, we had what was clearly a crust, a whiter crust.
Right.
Which is what I think you said we're
Yeah.
more concerned with. What I think Al and I are not comfortable with is hearing the spreading out from that even a little bit wider, another 10 or 15 feet in some areas, is this amber color. It has a slight crust to it, but I still think it's the same material. It just didn't become white. There were photographs
It could
from
very
a few
well
weeks
be.
ago.
Yeah, it could very well be. It could just be calcite that's impregnated with soil
So
particles.
is it safe to say that,
Yep.
as far as the, because you were just on site Monday, so it's unfair, so I apologize right up front. But it's probably safe to say that we're concerned that there's downstream restoration, cleanup and restoration that needs to be done. The extent to which we're working on understanding, but we're not there yet.
that's correct, that I'm working on understanding and definitely am not there yet.
So it very well might be wider than this initial statement, which it could be, but you haven't figured that out yet.
That's correct, and let me tell you how I intend to try to answer that question, to satisfy myself and ultimately you folks. And there's really, so my intent is to go and to look at the biological communities that are out there. Now, obviously, we've just started the growing season. It really hasn't kicked off. I do see out there, within some of these areas that are very clearly affected, have a very discernible crust. You can pick up a chunk of it on the native soil. There is some very vigorous skunk cabbage growing right within that material, which is good. I'm glad to see that. But it's too early in the growing season, in my opinion, to really do an evaluation because, you have a closed canopy in there, and a lot of the shrubs, throughout the whole area simply are not leafed out yet. So in the coming weeks, my intent is to go out there and to evaluate those areas.
So, and I think it's very fair at this early stage to make exactly that type of statement. But my underlying concern, I imagine it's similar to my colleagues, is that once we restore it, once we determine the limits and we make that restoration, that we're looking at the whole ecosystem itself. We're not looking at just the shrub layer or tree layers or the skunk cabbage work, but any other critters that would be needing to find its way into the soil or above the soil that uses those resource areas as they should be used, one. And two, is how far downstream does this plume of water, while the calcium, does the calcite stay in suspension? Is it in solution?
There can be calcium carbonate in solution, but the sediment that you see.
Well, the sediment's on our site.
Yeah.
My underlying concern, which I don't know if I'm ever going to understand, is whatever's in the water, how much is carrying downstream, how far does it go, and are there impacts?
I can answer that question at this point to a certain degree. I'm not sure how far downstream you walked, But what happens to the flow from that seep is there's obvious grade going down, and it runs down. I'm going to use this image, which will help a little bit. So this is the site property here, and the seep is over here. You can see in the yellow this is just Mass GIS data layers. This is the wetland area. This is the big industrial building down below. So the flow from the seep is down through this wetland area, and then there's some flow that runs along this building. Our flow from the site joins that flow, goes down in this direction. At this point, there's another stream. There's a big, I'm going to guess about a 42-inch culvert that daylights from under this parking lot right here. So there's a stream that flows this way. So this flow from here to this point is upstream of any influence from the site. So the flow from the site, again, down this wetland, down this channel, into here, it then flows down here. I will point out, if you look at this figure, you'll see this shows as a ponded area. Right now, it's not ponded because right at this point, and also at this point here, you can see in this figure, if you look closely, there are remnant beaver dams. I looked at the Google Earth where you can go back on the chronology. This pond has come and gone several times over the past 20 years. Right now, the beaver dam looks to me like it was I'm sorry?
It was an airport concern. They authorized its removal.
They did. I was actually going to ask you that. Thank you. Because it looked like it happened fairly recently. So right now, this was clearly underwater last growing season, is not now. So there's a stream that then runs along here to this now breached beaver dam, and another stream that flows here. There is calcite deposition through up here, as you saw. There is calcite in here. There is some signs of it in this channel. The last visual evidence that I could see was down here at this point, at the confluence of this stream, again, the one that comes from the site and under the parking lot, and this larger stream that runs kind of parallel to the taxiway. So right here, in terms of whole community, again, it's very qualitative only at this point. We did see fish. I did see fish in the stream down here on Monday. So that's obviously an encouraging sign. But in terms of assessment of the area, one of the things that I want to do is go out and look at the macroinvertebrate community that inhabits those streams. And the way we do that is we literally go out with it, put on our boots, go out with a dip net, you drag it along the bottom, and there are critters that live there. There are small crustaceans, there are mollusks, clams and snails, there are insect larvae of a number of different species that inhabit even small streams like that. I point out the distinction here that we have, at this point, we have what we like in my world, we have an upstream-downstream situation. So we have a fairly similar stream channel. It's an odd situation because it was recently underwater. So it's an environment that's in the early stages of transitioning from being an underwater environment to a stream environment. But we do have the ability to sample just upstream of the influence and just downstream. And I intend to do that. We'll see what's there. We can see what's there just in general in terms of diversity and species composition. And at this area in particular, we can see what's there in the upstream, downstream scenario. If this were a more typical situation where the stream channel was in a stable condition, I could sit here and somewhat generally predict what I think should be in there. But as I said, unfortunately, it's kind of an oddball situation in that it's developing this new community. It's still, the channel is actively eroding in there because it was underwater and not subject to stream flow, but now it is. So I can't really predict what will be in there, but we're going to go look. We're going to go and see what's in there. as well as do, once things have a chance to leaf out and we can get a more realistic assessment, we'll do the same thing with respect to the plant community up here. So it's a, this is a standard protocol, the way we do these things. We have the upstream, downstream. In the stream where we can find it. In the wetland area, I've identified a couple of, just preliminarily, a couple of areas that are kind of tributary to the flow, I'll call it the calcite flow. There's little side channels that are tributary to that appear to have similar hydrology and topography and that sort of thing, in similar in many aspects, but for the calcite. So I have those as controls. They're never perfect, controls are never perfect, but you try and get something that's as much like your affected area, but for that one attribute. So that's what I intend to do, and we'll find out. We may, for example, find that within this calcite affected area, that there are stressed or dead plants that I just couldn't see at this point because they're not leafed out. I just don't know. If there are, then I will report that to you and we'll tell you what we intend to do about it.
Are you going to quantify that for us in some kind of written format?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So.
At the very beginning of your presentation, you made reference to, and it's a fast reference, of toxicity. Now, that is a broad meaning, toxic to us, toxic to critters, toxic to plant life. So, I mean, there's different levels and different species function differently on their environment and the surroundings. So, how do you evaluate, how do you equate toxicity?
Well, there's not a ton of information. I haven't found a ton of information yet, but there are reference values that people look at, and the standard measure for reporting toxicity, you'll see on safety data sheets, for example, if you go down to the lower sections past the human health part, because I'm really looking at ecological toxicity, and not so much to the human health side. The way these things are typically reported is you'll see LOEC is the lowest observed effects concentration. And it'll be LOEC, for example, for fish or for algae or for some other taxonomic group.
Okay, that's exactly what I was aiming to, I had no idea.
Yeah, so there's,
somehow.
for different, if you take something, that's a more traditional, something that we all know as toxic, like benzene, there are thousands of studies that generate values, and then EPA will go and consolidate all those values for something like benzene, so that we get kind of an aggregate, benzene number for freshwater plants, for freshwater invertebrates, for freshwater fish, and then a whole different set for marine organisms. In this case, because we're not dealing with something as nasty as benzene, not nearly as nasty as benzene, there's not nearly as much information, but there is some. So I have found some. I haven't convinced myself that I found everything that's out there, but the values that I found are relatively high when compared to the solubility of this material. So in other words, if you have an effects concentration, if you show an effect at concentration X, and it takes almost 100% of this material, its maximum solubility, because again, you can only dissolve a certain amount of anything, has a solubility max. If your solubility approaches your toxicity, then it's really very difficult to experience toxicity. But having said that, I will go and do that research and I'll report it to you, whatever I find. But beyond that, I really think that I'll steal Paul's phrase from when we were talking earlier, the proof is in the pudding. And I think it's better, all these studies are interesting and informative, but you know, at the end of the day, we're really concerned with what did this material do to the environmental receptors on this site? And that's what I propose to go out and evaluate on the ground. And to the extent, to Jennifer's question, to the extent that I see those, I'll do my best to quantify that in terms of square feet or you know, length of channel or what, you know, whatever makes sense based upon the findings.
In my mind, I just try to always get comfortable with what timetable expectations I should be.
Yeah,
should be
maybe I can
using.
speak to like sequence of events and what we think might happen. You know, I think the first thing we intend to do is to turn on the well points and start pumping and treating. And then that will take several days, over several days, you know, for the rate of seepage entering the wetlands to decrease. It's not going to happen the minute you turn the switch on. It's going to take several days to eventually, you know, to draw the water down and eventually decrease the flow. And then Paul McManus is going to want to do his invertebrate studies, you know, to check, you know, the different parts of the stream for invertebrates. And then eventually things are going to be dried up more than they are, hopefully to the point where we can get in with the hand tools and do the remainder of the sediment cleanup.
So when you say it'll dry up, right, because you're going to de-water this, but you're still going to discharge it back out the other side. How is it going to dry up?
Well, I guess what we had talked about, I guess, is taking the treated water and using, I guess, one of the two
Other discharge
the two
points.
existing discharge points. I guess the third discharge point that we had presented earlier, I guess maybe it was 2 weeks ago, the last meeting. You know, it was uphill that grade of this wetland, the one with the main seep in it, but it was also property that we didn't control, and we wanted to be able to, you know, discharge. It would have involved, you know, doing, you know, hay bales or silt fence on.
So you're going to
someone
discharge
else's
at the
property.
2 points that you already have. One
Correct.
is still upstream of,
One closest to the entrance at
Right.
1.5, then the big seat, and then further closest to the
Right.
runway
Right.
is
And
the third one, correct?
Actually, that's a good point. That's the pond up on the
yeah,
northwest
yeah,
corner of the property.
The small.
I know it, and I know it was there. I know it was dug during the previous construction. Just while we're talking about that, I'd like that to be tested. I want that water in that pond tested. It's receiving water from the site.
Do you know what he's talking about?
Well, I think
I'm not clear, I'm not clear as to where you're talking
Brent-
about.
If you look at
Brendan
an
knows what-
overlay of the
Yeah,
site.
we did, Paul did additional, he did 5 well points over there as well, too.
Yeah, I want the water in the pond tested.
Okay.
It's receiving water from the site, and nobody has tested that pond.
So it's not a seep, it's not any erosion, any
It's a local,
siltation
it's a
that's moved
local,
down.
it's a local
But it
wetland.
does have water that came from there.
It
It's-
was a former retention basin from
Correct.
when the site was previously cleared or detention.
Right, that
or-
was 10 to 15 years ago.
Right.
And now it's receiving
But it's also been
calcified
heavily
water.
sedimented by a washout that occurred on the far side of the wall. So, I mean, it has been impacted.
Let's see what it is.
Okay.
You know, we can.
We plan to do well points there as well. So we
Uh,
put them in to
yeah.
stop the seeping application as well, so no more calcite.
So let's see what's in the pond right now. Let's test the water in the
So
pond.
the sequence that you just laid out was something I understand and makes some sense for sure. So now we have this transitional time beyond that, so the lot gets built out. I mean, we're only half disturbed for that matter, right? You still have the whole upper part that hasn't even broken ground, which scares the crap out of me, by the way, because it's only gonna just introduce more stuff, more water into the ground, and maybe at a faster rate. So, but once we get what's disturbed, at least bindered, and the drainage system online, and the infiltrators collecting that water and holding and slowly infiltrating it, it's at that point, I think it becomes critical that you as a team and us as a commission understand, so how does that new water getting in a defined fashion into the ground, what effect does that have on pump and treat? Are we seeing greater volumes, the need to pump more at a faster rate? And is that water getting a higher, lower level of calcite? Is it vanishing? Is it going away? We need to measure that. Because it's going to then tell us, it's going to at least begin to suggest what that long-term necessity for some sort of treatment needs to be. Because right now, it's unknown.
One of the really nice things about this well point system, and Paul touched on this earlier, is that you can understand which wells the water is being pumped from, just by throttling the vacuum, and you can, it's easy to understand where the water is coming from and how much, all right, because he has flow meters on his system, so he. Yep, and you can see it too.
Yeah.
So, so the short answer is, I think once we get this operating, I think we'll be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, and also to put your mind at ease, the capacity of the system, we're not even close to this. I mean, this thing could do hundreds and hundreds of gallons a minute, and we're going to be a fraction of that. So even if there is more water that's introduced, we can certainly manage it.
I'd like to see if we've been dominating the conversation, and I'd like to get on the table. Deb, any questions you'd like to ask her?
None at this time, because both of you have been on the site and I haven't, so.
We've been talking too much. Yeah, Sean?
Well, first, thank you both for taking the time to go out to the site and roll up your sleeves and get in depth as you have. And you guys are both the right people to do it, I think, too.
Clean my floor vents up.
But as far as what has been tested, are we sure that the only chemical that we're dealing with is calcite?
Yes, we are. I mean, that's because the impacts from the recycled concrete fill, they're really the only compounds that can be mobilized from dissolving into the water are the calcium carbonate forming compounds that you see from the byproducts of cement, and so we're confident that that's all that there is.
So it's definitely from there's no way that just the natural rock underneath, it could be coming from the natural contours out there or anything like that? It's stuff that was concrete that was brought into the site?
That's the way we understand it, yep.
Well, I will say that I've learned a lot about this in the past few days, and this is a naturally occurring compound.
Yeah, that's what I was Googling.
And in places, what we see out here, you talk about the karst water movement down south. There are in the limestone, there are big cavities where this stuff moves, and then downstream when it gets into the air, you get really massive amounts of what I'm calling the crust. So your point is your question is well founded, because this is in some environments, this is a natural phenomenon. Now, it's obviously in this one, it's not, because this was introduced material and it's not the native condition,
right.
And that's why we're all here. But your question's very well founded.
I have one well-founded question, I'm done.
You want to rest on your well-founded?
No, my unfounded ones I'll use for the next meeting.
You save that with plenty more meetings. Questions, comments?
It seems to me that the main concern is what effect on the environment will this calcite have? And I think that's a key question that needs to be thoroughly answered, because we may be in a situation where, short of removing the material that's causing the problem from the site, you may have this problem going on for quite a period of time. And whether you have a well point system in effect to try to remove this material, I don't see that going on indefinitely. It doesn't seem reasonable to me, but I think we need to understand what the problem to the environment that this material can cause. Because if it has shall we say, a negative effect on the environment, then we need to deal with it, clean it up. But if it has no ill effects, then this may be a situation that once the project is done, then we forget about it.
And this, on that point, Doug, and I
You're way ahead of
completely
me.
understand, I completely understand that. and we're just a body of the town of North Andover, an appointed group here. What we do have is impacts on private property downstream, two private properties.
Well, that's part of
And a river.
And so regardless of what we say, they may say, I don't care what North Andover Conservation Commission says, I don't want that stuff on my property. We're not gonna go there. We're gonna do it from our perspective based on the process we go through.
I think our concern is what effect on the environment does this material have?
I agree.
Period.
I agree with you. Now, and also, to that end,
No adverse effect on the environment, then it's not an issue to me.
Right.
if that's the case, if that's
You
the
know, if
case.
somebody downstream doesn't like the color of it, or something, periodically they get a color they don't like, and they want to get up and set, let them go sue them.
Well, that's the point I'm saying, is that, you know, we're gonna do what we do from our own perspective. I'm not extending our interest anywhere else off site other than for the environment.
What's the effect on the environment? If there is no effect on the environment long-term, then I don't have a problem with it.
Sedimentation alone is an effect on the environment. From a wetlands perspective, just the fact that they're sedimenting the wetlands with this calcium substrate, that it coats the stream bed, that it coats the wetland, and I think you pointed to that, is an automatic impact, in my opinion.
And to be clear, my opinion, when I it didn't take me long to come to this opinion when I went to the site and literally got down and started physically poking around, is that where that crust exists, this is a problem.
That will have an effect.
This is,
That alone has
and it's unusual because it's not, it's not a toxic effect in the normal sense, but it's a physical barrier to biological activity. So it's a problem. And my hope is that with the other work that I described, that I've yet to do, my hope is that we won't see other effects, but I don't know the answer to that. You obviously don't know the answer to that.
Also, part of the question is, how long does this effect last? Does it
Well, if
does it last indefinitely, or does it just for a period of time, then it goes away, because all the calcite has been removed?
Well, the physical effect is there, so our proposal is to clean that up. And again, my hope is that the negative effects are limited to that physical barrier. That's what we're engaging in trying to figure out. So I guess my hope is that we don't need to answer your question about, how long and permanent might a different effect be. So I guess I would ask to defer that until we decide whether there is such an effect.
Yeah, our hope is that this is, this is a temporary system to, basically collect the water and treat it while the site is opened up. And what we really believe is going to happen is once we start getting the hardscape on the site, get the site paved, and actually then start collecting the storm water, and running it through the storm drain system as opposed to having it infiltrate through the materials that are on the site now, we think that that's going to improve things quite a bit. But we are going to run the system, we're going to operate it, and like I said earlier, we're in this for the long haul, and we're going to do what it takes. But from where we see it now, we think that things are going to improve significantly once the site gets paved and starts getting closed up.
The stormwater from the site is going to be disposed of on-site
That's correct.
and put into the groundwater, which is going to flow off downstream through the soil. And if it's going through this calcite, it's going to take calcite with it.
That is the long-term effect concern of the continued need to do something with intercepting that water and treating it. We don't know yet. And, we can just keep going on. This is a fascinating conversation, but, what I wanted to get was, tonight, I think I got...
To a degree, it seems to me that if this is an effect that's going to go on indefinitely into the future, then you're better off taking that material that's causing it out of the ground.
Which would require demolition of buildings, which is why they don't want to do it.
Yeah, what they've been able to take out, they've taken out.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. They put it in and chose to build over it, which made it not removable, maybe.
Fair enough.
This is a self-inflicted wound. I'm sorry.
I apologize. I was just going to say that things will change with the paving and the infiltration systems. The system will still be in place to do that. We don't know exactly what the effect of that will be, but we do know that this is a finite problem. And you know, we don't know quite how long it will take, how much treatment it will take, but it is a finite problem. It will reach a steady state once the site gets stabilized. And as you said, there's a couple of major things that will happen in so doing. But you know, the system is in place. All such systems, you know, as Vern said, you know, require some tweaks and adjustments on the fly. That's the nature of them. But you know, these folks have committed to doing what it takes.
So I just want to put something out to the commissioners. I think if you look at your worksheet, the last item on the worksheet, you guys have it as well, is that we should consider engaging an expert that works specifically for this commission as the commission's expert to work in parallel with their experts to make sure we really understand what's going on there.
It's funny you mentioned that, Al. I didn't make it all the way down to I, but the first thing, one of the things that's popped in my mind now is, what is the right expert for this? And is it Paul, is that right?
That's my.
So you're a wetland scientist, correct? And your experience with calcite is, what's your experience with calcite before this event?
I don't have experience with calcite. I have a lot of experience with other contaminants in wetland resources of various types.
Yeah.
And the term we use is ecological risk assessment. So I have a lot of experience with that. I don't have experience with calcite.
Do you know anybody that does?
No, this is a new issue to me, frankly.
But it's not just that. It's the issue that's been brought up, that there's the opinion and the hope that when and if the place is bindered and the stormwater system comes online, that might be the cure. But that very well might not be the cure, and it as I said, a lot of the areas where this crushed and reclaimed concrete was put in are already buried under buildings. So, I mean, unless you're going to make them move a building, it's almost not removable. We need somebody that's at the level of like Lisa Eggleston or a licensed site professional with stormwater expertise.
No, I'm telling you, we are in this region of the United States, we're in virgin ground. There's very little science out there.
We need an expert that brings a lot of these disciplines to the table, that can help us understand exactly what's happening. They've got some qualified people here. We need someone.
I don't think we're going to, in fact, in the past, we've hired Ecotech to be our, so I'm not saying that this is, I think the better thing to do from our perspective, and this has nothing to do with the people at the table, would be to reach out to DEP and let them know how far outside of the realm of experience with people around here this is, and that, you know, we want their, I think they should come to the site, and they may or they may not, but I think that would be the first place I would want to go.
I have no objection. The last place I would go.
You would say it would be the last place?
It's the last place we would go.
Really?
What you have is you have the wetlands group in the DEP realm, and you have the solid waste group in the DEP
No, we're not asking for a solid waste.
You got people in the same agency advocating to use recycled concrete. It's a wonderful thing, do it, because they just want to get rid of the crap, just like the processed glass. And you've got, a bureaucrat at the top just telling solid waste, you do what you do, and don't worry about the wetlands folks.
I'm not asking for them to figure out what's happening.
I would not go there. It's corrupt.
It seems to me, if this material, this crushed concrete is used as fill material widely, that this problem with calcite is not new.
It isn't new, and that's why I'm
So it
saying
has to be
go to
existed
them.
somewhere else, so there has to be people out there that, if there's a problem that it produces, they ought to know what it is.
That's why I want to engage somebody to work for us, to work side by side with Jen, who we only have maybe for another, who knows. We need someone, we need somebody that's at the level, that understands stormwater, that understands sites, that can match the equivalent knowledge of these guys over here, so that, you know, we need, I don't know.
You know, we're the poor, little, basic, hard-working folk of North Andover. We put in our standard conditions, thou shalt not put crap in your fill. We say it.
So, Joe.
And yet, that's what they brought in here.
But here's the other concern.
And because of that, and the fact that we have a groundwater system, a drainage system, that reintroduces water into that groundwater, it's only going, my fear is it perpetuates the condition,
Well,
so.
hold on, that's exactly where I'm going. If there's any chance that this is gonna be perpetual, I'm unwilling to go any much further with the project.
I think we have to.
Well, see, this is the problem. We're gonna have differing opinions based on our limited working knowledge of what we do. We gotta get we gotta get the Wizard of Oz in here, and.
I think but there's no benefit to us shutting the project down, slowing the project down, ripping the material out,
Well.
other than the long-term benefit forever and ever. And in the process of doing all that, what do we create?
How do we know that? How do you know that this stuff isn't gonna be seeping out under these walls for the
I
next
think
30
the
years?
alternative is give them some time to prove that it works. And if it doesn't, then it says, well, you tried your best.
And then what are you gonna do, Joe?
With all due respect,
Yeah.
this is something that is pretty common. I mean, this happens on thousands of projects everywhere. This is, I mean, concrete is a pretty common building material. And there is some.
This was used as fill.
I understand that.
This makes
but
it, this really separates it
If
from.
you have a foundation, whether it's crushed concrete or it's fresh concrete, you pour a slab, you pour a foundation, you use concrete, you're gonna be affecting, at least temporarily, the water, but it does reach an equilibrium. It does. Over time, it does reach an equilibrium.
Well, you know, the houses in this town that have concrete foundations and concrete basement floors, that have perimeter drain systems underneath, are not discharging calcite to daylight out of their perimeter drain systems. It's just not happening.
Well, I think it's a question of scale, but it's still the same material.
But it's aged differently, right? And it's solid, and it's got a membrane waterproofing on the outside, so it's a different animal. We've got a crushed concrete product, so whatever calcium element is in that, it's now pulverized and powdered, and it's more susceptible to being carried within the water column, and it's a different animal. What we have is a very bad combination of a groundwater infiltration system with crushed concrete. That's what's there. And short of ordering them to take it all out, I'd say the only other alternative is good faith, and let's get a reasonable time frame to be able to continue to assess the calcite, to pump and treat it and contain it, and then having done all of that, secure the site and evaluate the wetlands. And from there, we might have the same argument some period of time down the road, 6 months, 9 months. I don't know how long it's gonna take, but I think until you do all those things, I think it's reckless for us to say stop or change, the mode.
I didn't say that. I said I want a consultant.
Yeah, let's go with the consultant.
I said I
Is there
want a
anybody here
consultant.
that
I haven't
doesn't
said I
think we
was
should
gonna
get a
stop them. I
consultant?
haven't said any of that. But I
The
do have a
consultant we would
problem.
hire is sitting right there.
Well,
That's the guy we would hire.
you know something?
He's taken.
And Paul, you had said, once the system is closed, everything is gonna go away and you're gonna have no problems. How could you assure us of that?
No, I don't think I said that.
Oh.
I didn't say that.
They don't know that,
what-
they don't know the answer.
What I said is that these folks are gonna keep running it until such time as we and you are confident that it's no longer a problem. And the question that's been,
So if that boundary condition is, and all of that is, that we're satisfied prior to the development being done and occupied and functioning, then there's no issue. As soon as that first tenant moves in and there's this big dumpster, frac tank in my backyard, making noise because it's pumping, I mean, how does that, I mean, ultimately it affects the marketability, the residency, future phases, I mean, they're on a real fast construction track, and they need to be on a faster track to solve and answer the question.
So what I'm unwilling to do is I'm unwilling to be part of an operation that just gets frustrated and just buries the mistake. Okay, I just am. So I'm asking for this commission to consider hiring an expert that works for us. Because, no disrespect to any of these guys here, but they're working for the applicant.
So you're saying an expert. So what we have here is 4 experts.
Working
right at
for
our
the applicant.
fingertips.
Right.
We have a geotechnical scientist.
I got it, I got you.
We have an environmental
We do it all the
scientist.
time, called third-party peer review. We
We have
do
a
it all
water
the
quality
time.
expert, for lack of a better term. And we have a professional engineer who's all part of the team.
Gotcha.
So who are you watching? We watching all 4 of them? There's no one person out there.
Well, I think we need to discuss that a little bit more.
You know, Joe,
we.
I mean, I'm frustrated because I wish there was, the magic wand we could wave and say, that's the guy we want to oversee this.
You know, I don't believe in magic, and I don't believe in coincidences, okay? What I want is someone that's qualified at their level, working for us.
One or more. One or more person.
One or more, I don't care. I want
Check
us
and balance.
Seriously, okay? That's what I'm looking for. And it shouldn't be an unusual occurrence for any of these guys, because third-party peer review is not new. It's not a new concept. It's been in our bylaw for 30 years.
Yeah.
So,
And if there's an area where we need help, I think this is
you know,
the biggest one I've seen since I've joined the board.
because we have to render a decision that impacts the procedure and how this project ends, and I'm not comfortable.
I wouldn't rule it out. I think it's certainly a fair statement. I reserve judgment to see what the availability is out there, but
There's
I don't
two
think we can do
routes
that
to
on
go
the
with
table
that.
tonight.
So
I think we need a couple weeks to get to that.
There's an agents
In the
network. If
meanwhile-
anyone in the wetlands world has ever had a project where this has happened, there's a group of people out there that I can email.
I want Paul's biggest competitor.
No, and I don't think that's the
Hey,
solution.
you just go on North Andover Moms, I'm sure they
You know,
have
you know,
somebody that can.
this isn't about Paul Senior, okay? This isn't about
DEP
these
is
guys.
also able to advise us on
It's not.
what we should be doing, if there is
And I'm not
somebody
trying
out
to be
there.
disrespectful.
If they've seen the project, if they've seen this before.
That's what I'm
There are
looking
other,
for.
right, so give me 2 weeks to search those entities,
Yes.
to see what the
That's what I'm
right
looking for.
thing to be doing.
That's all I'm
Fair
looking
enough,
for.
fair enough.
But
Okay.
we're not gonna decide it tonight, we're not gonna pick consultants
I
tonight.
wasn't asking for a
Okay.
decision tonight, I was asking for the conversation to start, for our agent to start the research, and you can start research too if you want. You want to start digging into it and stuff and come up with names, you know, this is what we gotta do,
I
guys.
compare notes.
All right, all right. Okay.
So I think, so
I'm good.
basically, at this point, you are, because this enforcement order no longer encompasses all that they're doing out there,
Yeah.
I think we should issue them an enforcement order that sort of authorizes them to do the things they said they're gonna do.
Yeah, well, that's clearly, I agree.
And then
'cause
that
what
they
gotta do
report
is
back-
they gotta run the well points.
That they report back at every meeting until we decide that, at least, I mean, I don't think you need to bring everybody to every meeting,
Well,
but
that's their
the
call.
experts,
That's their
yeah,
call. If they want to
okay.
bring everybody, I don't care, but you know, we're not gonna let this thing
Right, I
fall
get
by
it.
the wayside. I'm
It's gonna
sorry,
stay
you know.
as a recurring item on the agenda.
I'd rather be accused of being over more thorough than I need to be than to sit back and say, yeah, take a couple weeks off and then find out that was a mistake.
Okay.
Sure.
Am I correct in understanding that all the crushed concrete has been removed from the site except for what exists under the existing buildings that have been already
They
found?
excavated it out from underneath the infiltration units and in the buffer zone where they could, where it didn't support walls but across the rest of the site, there is crushed concrete used as fill and foundation and all sorts of places.
It's under the buildings and the wall.
Very first enforcement, I shouldn't say very, the early enforcement order was to remove all glass and crushed concrete material directly beneath, from all buffer zone areas, and directly beneath all of the stormwater infiltrators.
It's
You know,
still on the rest of
whatever
the
is
site.
in the ground is gonna.
That's my bigger-
the
that's the
water is
long-term
gonna
fail.
soak through it,
That's right.
because the stormwater from this site is all put into the groundwater. And it's gonna flow through the ground, it's gonna end up going downstream. And whatever comes to the atmosphere is gonna then crystallize if this stuff is in it.
That's what my fear is, the
Seems to me
long-term
that material should have been just banned from the site, period.
Well, when they removed it, they brought no more, they imported no more material.
But they didn't take it all
It wasn't retroactive.
Well,
They didn't
seems to
take
me
it all out.
If
They-
it exists in places they can easily remove it, then they probably ought to remove it.
When I was at the site, on Sunday,
They just stop the glass.
the places where it is have structures on top of them.
If that's the only place, I can understand them not wanting to remove a structure, that's.
We have
like
all the
removing everything and
UTS
then
reports. We
starting
know
from
what
scratch
material
again.
is where across the entire site.
So I would say within 1 month, I'm going to have to know a decision of what that impact for continued groundwater movement is, because if, in fact, stormwater getting into the infiltrators, in fact, moves through this material and continues to leach, we might have to say redesign your stormwater system, take out some buildings and put some surface stormwater management in, and keep it out of the ground, rather than start tearing buildings out. Just don't build future buildings. We might put a halt on future phases.
What's the long-term effect of this material?
Well, one of the questions I asked, is this a forever thing? Is this going to be forever? Are we going to be doing this forever? And they can't answer that. It's really an unfair question. They don't know.
Well, they don't know, we don't know.
And we don't know.
The biggest question that needs to be answered is what's the long-term effect of this calcite on the environment?
Yep.
Because if the long-term effect is nil, then it's not a problem.
We already know it's not nil, because we know that anything that gets into the wetland resource area and chokes it out and acts as a,
Well, we gotta find out if that is long-term.
it's the same as,
Or whether it gets washed away with the rainwater.
any turbidity that gets in a resource area has the ability to choke it out and alter the plant life and the animal life there. That's.
Depends on how long it lasts.
Well, it appears,
No, it doesn't, that's not true.
I don't think that's true either, but, anyway, it's 10 o'clock. I think we're not gonna do this all night. It's not gonna happen. Is there anything these guys need to know? Yes, Joe, yes.
First, on the concept of putting the water into the infiltration systems and then moving through the recycled concrete, as directed by this commission, we removed it from under the systems and 10 feet around. We believe that when those systems come online, the water's going to move vertically through the underlying soil that's below these systems, which is dense grade, clean, virgin aggregate, and down to the parent material below. And that we're not going to get lateral movement through the RCA. No, what I'm saying is it's not going to move laterally. It's going to move vertically to that interface. So we think.
I'm not convinced of that. I'm not convinced of that. I don't know where, I'd have to look at the in situ profile of where it gets less permeable, and, because I think you're gonna get underneath that system, you're gonna get some mounding, it's gonna disperse, it's gonna try to get down, but it's gonna disperse, and when it does that, it's gonna be getting into those other aggregates, and has a possibility of picking up calcium carbonate.
Well, it's not going to move out of the infiltrators once it's in there.
Not what is?
Well, I mean, it'll move through the infiltrators, but it won't be moving laterally outside the infiltrators. I mean, groundwater will still be flowing, but technically everything above is paved. So is that what you're saying, that everything
Yeah.
will be channeled through the infiltrators? It won't be going down either, though, because you put, I mean, at least all the soil reports I saw said you put glacial till under the infiltrators, so they're not going to infiltrate
So where's the water going?
out of the systems once it,
Are they truly just underground cisterns holding
Yes.
tanks?
No, they're infiltrations.
They are infiltrated, so the water's going somewhere through the soil. That's what we don't know. We don't know where or how, or where it picks up the concrete
that's a whole
material.
different discussion.
So what we need them to do is exactly what they're doing. We need them to get the well points going, and we need to monitor what they're doing, have them come back in 2 weeks and look at the inspection reports that are generated in the next 2 weeks.
It wasn't just saber rattling. I think in a month's time, we want them to, by demonstrating to us that they're actually making some great headway, and you are making great headway, that you're continuing to demonstrate that. And, you know, if we start getting uneasy, I mean, I would like to consider serious consideration to stop future phases of construction. You know, stabilize what's there, finish what's there, and hold off future phases until we get this thing under control.
I want a designated hitter before I get there. All right? I want a DH. I want this commission to consider hiring a DH to work for us. And meanwhile, we know what they're doing. if you need a new EO to authorize it.
Yeah, I want you to issue
All
an
right, so
EO authorizing.
someone please move that EO.
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, and that's unanimous. You have your new EO. Any other questions, guys, or can we call it a wrap for tonight? All right. Jen, you good?
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, guys. Thank you. I'm going to turn the gavel back over to
Jen has
Mr.
10 hours a
Napoli.
week, she's been here for 4.
It's
Yeah.
just to adjourn.
If-
What about that, another thing in my packet?
That's
No,
that's
we
read
don't
only.
need to discuss that right now.
Okay, let's not.
Read only,
You wanna
okay,
go
so,
home?
so I'll offer the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say
Aye.
Aye.
opposed, that's unanimous.
We stand adjourned, thank you.